Chapter 23. Chapter 21. Red Kryptonite. Third-person POV. Nothing says school spirit like a ring that looks like it's jacked from P. Diddy. Chloe teases. I think it looks great. Clark replied. I think we'll be lucky. If the glue holds through graduation. I wonder if the ruby's even real. Chloe questioned, then leaves and heads for the school paper's office. You sure you're gonna do this? Pete asks Clark while he lines up next to get the school rings. I'm here, aren't I? Clark replied confidently. What? I believe your dad's exact words were. $350 is a lot of money to spend on something you don't need. I earned that money. Besides, Dad said it was my decision to make. Which means that you're really not supposed to buy it. Pete mocks, then hands the permission slip to the counter. As Clark and Pete talked while getting the school rings, Lana Lang was giving the transfer student a tour of the school. Behind them, Ven simply follows, wearing casual clothes, trying to blend in and not be noticed. One of Ven's favorite function of the symbiote that most media seemingly gloss over was that it can mimic other clothing, so he never had to buy clothes. He can simply look at designs and think what he wants to wear. He can even make his own design and combination so he can look whatever he wants, like a one-man fashion show. But right now, he's doing the opposite of standing out and trying to blend in. He's already close enough with only a few meters away. As Clark was about to wear the ring, Ven immediately steps in and holds his hand for a bit. It's their Boy Scout. Clark and Pete look to each other confused before asking, Can I help you? No, but I can help you. Is there any place we can talk in private around here? Trust me, you'll want to hear this first before you put that ring on. Oh, and Pete can come too. At first Clark was going to ignore the guy since he was really looking forward to getting the school ring, but he finds that he can't move his arm. Whoever the guy was, he was really strong. Very close to his own strength. This made Clark curious, so he led the guy and Pete to an empty classroom. As they were moving away, Lana and the new student transfer Jessie saw them from afar. Whoa. Who were those major hotties? Jessie asked Lana. Chloe then got back to look for her friends but found Lana instead and heard Jessie, so she replied. Who? Clark? And the other guy who went with him, and the short one? I didn't know Smallville's got so many major hotties just running around the corner. Jessie said with a slight blush. I think I might like it here. I don't know, I didn't think we had more than one new student. Lana said while agreeing with the girl, as she felt the other guy was indeed quite attractive. Interesting. Chloe said while she bit her lower lip. Gotta ask Pete and Clark later. I'm sure they'll spill the beans. She thought to herself. After finding one that's empty, they closed the door while Ven proceeded to look for cameras just in case, or any electronic devices that could be recording with X-ray and hearing. Then he proceeds to confront Clark. Alright, so who are you and why do you want to talk with me? Clark asks. You can call me Venerable. Then he proceeds to shake both Clark and Pete in succession. But who I am doesn't really matter right now, as it's more important for you to hear what I have to say. The school rings aren't exactly rubies. Those red gems are in fact red meteor rocks, or to be more specific, red kryptonite. So they're fake? So what? What's that got to do with Clark, and what's kryptonite? Pete asks. Oh, kryptonite with a K, that's the meteor rocks that emit sort of a radiation that hurts Clark. You know, the green ones. Except they don't only come in green. At this moment Clark and Pete's heart started to beat faster. How do you know about that? Clark asks cautiously. He understands that denying it would have been pointless since he was beyond normal strong. Something about that made Clark ask more about it. And how are you so strong, nearly as strong as me? Pete looks at Clark, surprised to hear someone as strong as his alien friend, but proceeds to ask Ven. Yeah, and why doesn't it hurt him like the green ones? Oh, I know a lot about you, Clark, about where you come from, who you really are. I'll tell you eventually. Right now I want you to understand first about the school ring. First, kryptonite doesn't just come in green. There's red, blue, silver, black, gold. The point is, there's different colors and each variation affects you differently. These red ones in particular make you lose control. Your judgment of what's right and wrong, it brings out your desires. But other red ones may bring out different effects. Look man, this sounds too out there to be true. I mean, you seriously asking us to believe these red ones will somehow make Clark lose proper judgment and bring out his desires? Pete asks skeptically. I mean, you don't really have to believe a word I say, you know. You can choose to ignore it. Just saying, if you do that, make sure you have green variants handy nearby. Why would we want that? Pete asks. Can you imagine Clark not caring about hiding his powers? And doing whatever he wants without thinking of the consequences? You seriously don't even consider the possibility of any accidents with his powers. Oh. Yeah, probably not cool. Pete says meekly. Yeah, so just make sure you have a green one handy in case Clark becomes a bit out of control. I mean, can you imagine a Clark that doesn't care, and only does what he wants in that moment? Just the thought of a superpowered being loose in Smallville without any regard for safety or any consequences sends shivers down their spines. Yep, so anyway, that's all I came to say. For now. I'm sure you'd want to, test this if it indeed changes you, so that's your choice, I won't stop you. Ven states. Then why did you come and tell us all this? Clark asks. Because there's a lot of different kinds of kryptonite and you need to be careful if you come into contact with these. We don't want a Super Clark speeding around using his powers as if he's extremely drunk now, would we? Ven proceeds to start walking to the door but looks back for a bit. Oh, and a word of advice, make sure you're not under the influence when you're around the Luthers. Who knows what you'll let slip if you do. Ven opens the door before finally saying, I'll tell you about your origin some other time. When I think you're ready. See you around, Clark. Then he waves his hand then leaves the room. Clark thought for a moment but he decided he wanted to try and persuade him to tell him what he knows now. But after he hears a whoosh sound and looks out the door, the man was gone. Great. He's fast too. Pete wakes up from being too stunned to speak then asks his friend. Think he's from wherever you're from? I don't know, Pete. I don't know. The rest of the events play out the same as the episode. But Ven made sure and watched from afar. But when Clark and Lionel Luthor meet at the time, Clark proceeds to shoot 3 gunshots onto his own hand to scare the other guy with the gun. At the time, Lionel was blind so he didn't see what was happening but Clark proceeded to interrogate the man with the gun and pins him on the wall with the pool table before knocking him out. After Clark leaves, Ven made sure to superspeed inside the mansion and obtain the 3 bullets that Clark stopped and dropped on the ground before speeding away. While this won't remove Lionel's suspicion on Clark, at least he won't have the hard evidence of the stopped bullets. Ven then made sure the man with the gun earlier dies as he was supposed to later, shot by the girl Jesse's father. When Ven was sure everything went the same, it was time for him to leave for now. But he knew he needed to keep an eye for any police reports regarding LuthorCorp and the Kawach Cave's discovery. He estimated probably next week or so. Before going back to Gotham, Ven heard about some auditions for the English localization were going to be held in LA, so he decided to speed on over for a bit to take a look. But as he was near the audition site, there was a crime scene being investigated nearby. He was going to ignore it at first but he felt like someone was staring at him from the crime scene area. Ven took a look around and saw a female detective talking to some of the witnesses and next to her was a man in an expensive-looking suit staring at him with a curious stare. Only one thought went through his head. OSHI. It was Lucifer fucking Morningstar. Chapter 22. I Met the Devil. Third-person POV. The man in expensive-looking suit walked towards Venerable. The female detective got curious and went along with the man. Well. What do we have here? Lucifer. Morningstar, he said with a smile like that of a child who found something new and interesting. And this is Detective Chloe Decker. Chloe Decker at this current time does not yet know of Lucifer's true identity, but she knew he had a certain ability to get people talking about their desires. She also knew Lucifer was usually bored on crime scenes unless it's particularly strange. So she was curious enough to see what got the strange man's attention. Ven Matthews. As in Wayne Enterprises' Ven Matthews? A young woman suddenly appeared behind Lucifer and interjected with a rather excited tone. Sorry, where are my manners? I'm Ella Lopez. Yes, the very same Ms. Lopez, Ven replied as he shook her hand after shaking Chloe's. OMG, I don't believe it. Did you know he's the most popular guy in gaming circles lately? Everyone's excited about the new games he's going to release after buying out Squaresoft. People say he's hired a lot of new people which leads us to believe he's... Ella says excitedly to her colleagues but was interrupted by Chloe. Ella. Crime scene, remember? Oh yeah. It was nice meeting you. Then she goes back to the crime scene. She's very lively, isn't she? Ven says with a smile. He actually enjoyed her character when he used to watch Lucifer on Netflix. He then proceeds to shake hands with Lucifer as he hasn't yet. Yes, she's very energetic, unlike you seem to be, Mr. Matthews. Tell me, what is it that you desire? Lucifer asked as he tried his powers on Ven, making the handshake a little bit longer. Ven knew this was coming and was curious how it felt, but for some reason he didn't feel the urge to spill his guts. So he simply said, I don't know, games I guess. I have a passion about gaming. I have so many plans that gets me so excited about all of it. While saying that, Ven decided to risk it by making the inside of his palm the part of his symbiote body so he can try if he could analyze him or if Lucifer can detect him. Lucifer simply raised a brow, indicating he at least detected something strange but didn't mention anything. It was a bit of an awkward handshake since Lucifer tried his ability and Ven tried to analyze him. Afterward they simply both let go. While Ven got what he wanted, he didn't fully study it yet. He simply memorized Lucifer's celestial cells. He wanted to copy and analyze it later. Lucifer and Chloe found the response very curious that Ven simply shrugged and seemed like he just spoke randomly. They both felt Ven wasn't really affected by the ability. They tried asking a few more questions but Ven simply said he was in a hurry for an audition so he bid farewell and walked away. While Chloe thought nothing of it, Lucifer was still quite curious and thought maybe they can talk later on in private. In truth, Lucifer felt the symbiote grab onto him and cope a feel to analyze him, but being the rebellious angel, Lucifer allowed a mortal to look into his cells just because he thought it was interesting. Lucifer stared at Ven walking away while thinking to himself, maybe he can consider this a deal, and he could potentially cash in on the favor at a later date. Ven went to the audition but he was way too preoccupied and distracted. He was currently studying part of his symbiote body that was mimicking Lucifer's cells. They were so weird to say the least. Out of sheer curiosity, he tried to combine his current face with a few of Lucifer's traits without changing his physical face and appearance. After a few seconds, the people around the audition suddenly felt like they were drawn to him. While he looked rather handsome, it was still bearable, but then for some reason he suddenly looked more charming despite no change whatsoever. Vin realized that this might be Lucifer's unnatural charm of some sort. Since this wasn't really all that bad, he might use this every now and then. But for the time being, since he was in LA and at risk of running into him again, Ven decided to turn the function off for the time being and finally focused on the auditions. Later that evening, Ven decided to book a room in Lux Hotel. While it wasn't generally a good idea to outright seek Lucifer, he also knew he shouldn't really avoid him since he was already seen. He decided to just talk it out with him despite the risk since he knew a bit about Lucifer's rebellious and carefree attitude and his current Superman cells. Ven decided to eat at the hotel's restaurant, and as he had guessed, Lucifer would have gotten word and appeared before him. "That was very naughty of you earlier." Lucifer chuckled. "Lucky that was me you did it to, not my dear brother. Otherwise you would have been hunted down by old dark and broody Aminadiel." "Yeah, well, I figured you probably let it slide, but it was a rather cheeky move." Ven replied calmly despite his internal mind being a little nervous. "So how much do you know about me?" "That you naughty Clintar, you are in the wrong universe cluster. It's quite intriguing to see your kind here despite being under a totally different set of Celestial's jurisdiction." Ven thought it was interesting since it doesn't seem like he knows his actual origin about being a former human. It seemed to Ven that Lucifer only knows him as a symbiote from the Marvel universe and he is aware of that side but nothing beyond that. "So how did you get here, if I may ask?" "Dunno, woke up in this Earth but decided to roll with it. It's not gonna be a problem, is it? I mean, it's not like I deliberately breached my way here." Ven replied. "Well, don't look at me for answers. I've been stuck in hell for eons. I've only recently gotten out, you know. But to be honest, it's not like I care anyway. I'm on Vaki, but I am going to count you as owing me one. You did cop a feel after all." Lucifer exclaims while giggling. "Great, haven't been here long and I already owe the devil." Ven sighed. "It's not that bad, I don't really need your soul or nonsense like that. Speaking of, how is it you're strangely aware of my true nature and how is it you're not affected by my mojo? For your first question, that I can't say. Multiverse secrets and all that. Second question, I have no idea. Was actually looking forward to it, to be honest." "Ha ha 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 ha. Multiverse secrets, eh? That's hilarious. Imagine the devil being kept out of the loop for multiverse secrets, ha 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 ha." Lucifer laughed for a bit before getting his bearings again. "That's a good one. But fine, I don't mind if you keep your multiverse secrets. It might be more interesting this way." Lucifer ponders for a bit, then continues. "Normally, despite being assigned in hell, I should be investigating your existence here on this reality and how you got here. But as I'm on Vaki for the foreseeable future, I won't really care about your shenanigans. Heck, I might even join in on the fun if you do something interesting. But I will cash in on that favor when I deem it necessary. Though you might want to avoid my brother if you can. He's way too uptight for his own good." Lucifer then stands up before saying, "Now if you'll excuse me, I have some girls to attend to." He laughs then walks away. "See you around, Venny boy. Can't wait to see the changes you do here in this world." And then he's gone. Ven was left pondering. While it's generally not a good idea to owe the devil one, after remembering Lucifer's personality in the show and confirming he's mostly the same here, Ven thinks he can pretty much consider this like any other favor and that he shouldn't be unreasonable. He hopes. But Ven seriously thinks it might be better to avoid LA for a bit. At least until Aminadiel gets a baby and starts being a little more flexible. So Ven finishes his meal and decided to leave LA in the morning. Though he decides to turn on his newfound charm since it might be a little fun to attract attention every now and then. Chapter 23. The Octagonal Key. Third-person POV. We are live at the LuthorCorp Tower where sometime earlier this afternoon, armed gunmen apparently entered the building, and are now holding LuthorCorp chairman and CEO Lionel Luthor hostage, along with at least one unidentified female employee. The TV plays as the news is heard. As Ven watched the news, he recalls this particular episode of Smallville and realizes he needs to make a quick unnoticed visit to Smallville once more. It seems the Kawach Caves were recently discovered, and Lex already filed for its preservation, but they have yet to insert the octagonal key. Ah yes, the hostage situation episode for Martha and Lionel. As I recall, this is when the octagonal key appears from Lionel's vault, and should later be stolen by Martha Kentucky. As I recall, Martha would be hiding it in a green flower container in the kitchen. As soon as she hides it there, I need to borrow it for a bit. While this wasn't when the key first appeared, this is when it would be best to borrow it. The Kents don't exactly have security in the farm, so it's very simple to sneak in. Ven thought that he had to be quick about his plans. As he recalled, the next few days after the hostage incident, there would be a bunch of kids having a party in the caves which would then trigger LuthorCorp to seal of the caves for their research. So the only window was right after Martha hides it and before the party. The rest of the events happen the same as the show, and Clark rescues Martha and Lionel. Meanwhile, Martha quickly tells Clark to burn the files while she steals the key and puts it in her pocket. After some lengthy scolding by the police for sneaking inside the building, Clark and the Kents were allowed to go home after taking their statements. Martha then hid the key, and as planned, Ven sneaked in to borrow the key by going inside the house in symbiote form and taking it as quietly as possible. After escaping the house, he then went back to Ven form and went super speed to the Kawach caves. He stood in front of the slot for the key with great anticipation. Moment of truth. According to my theory, putting this key would initiate a download of information of Kryptonian language and whatever else information the cave wants to impart the holder of the key. From that time, the linguist hired by Lex tried it in the show. It looked like the same as when Clark did. Except when Clark did it, his brain was able to handle the information. But that linguist Lex hired was only human, so it put him in a coma for a while. So to be extra careful, Ven changed his current body's cells to pure Kryptonian, and not the mixed optimized one without weaknesses. So in the current Ven would be biologically Kryptonian. Ven decided to do some sort of a backup plan. He created a clone, and just like Danton Black's method, he gave the clone a simple command ahead of time so it won't remain on standby. Its orders were to bring him back to Wayne Manor right after his expected download in case he gets into a coma. He then created a separate one to return the key to the Kents. After much mental preparation, he inserted the key to the wall. The key then produced a symbol in the shape of the shield for the House of L. Since it didn't appear as the symbol like with the linguist, Ven knew he had tricked the cave to thinking he was Kryptonian. A bright light beamed like flowing water through his chest and begun the download of information to the current brain. And since it wasn't exactly Ven's actual brain, any potential damage could be avoided, and Ven can simply absorb the knowledge as he would when he connects to a host normally. After a while, Ven's body collapses on the ground. No matter what Ven does, he can't control it at the moment. He theorized that it might be due to the knowledge being processed by the mimicking Kryptonian brain. So he had no choice but to absorb the knowledge together with his current body. Meanwhile, the clones did as they were originally pre-programmed and brought Ven back to Gotham and the other to return the key. It took Ven longer to process the knowledge than Clark, but it was anticipated, so he simply remained in bed for a while. Ven woke up at 12 noon. He realized it did take him a while, but at least not a coma like the linguist. He then tries to recall the knowledge, and he is sure that he now knows Kryptonian language. He then reverted back his cells to his optimized version since he had completed his task. Now that he had learned it, his next target was the parasites in the Kawach caves. He just wanted to make sure Lex didn't have any live samples, or any for that matter. In the show, after the linguist found the parasites, they destroyed the nests but had live ones caught, and Lex had them brought to Cadmus Labs in Metropolis. By then, Pete and Chloe had already been infected, but Clark would solve that anyway. Ven didn't mind letting them get infected, as for all he knew, it might be important to Clark's development, but either way, he hasn't decided yet if he wants to interfere. So he just visited Smallville regularly just to keep an eye on things for now and wait for his moment. The next few days, the kids finally have their unsanctioned party in the caves. One student named Travis jumped from a high support beam and died. He assumed by the following day Pete would have started acting strange already. Ven couldn't estimate when Lex would discover the parasites, so he had to keep visiting daily to take a closer look. It was easy enough to hide anywhere if you can stick to walls in the first place or super speed to a different spot. One simple indication that the time is pretty close would be when Chloe started acting up. So Ven decided to visit her in the school papers room. Chapter 24. Chloe R16 third-person POV. In the Smallville TV show, Pete and Chloe gets infected by a parasite from the Kawach caves. Chloe later acts without restraint and gets caught by Clark, kissing some random boy in the torch office. But Ven came to that office, so Chloe never got to grab one random student from the hallway. The parasite was slowly affecting her, so she was starting to care less and less about what others thought or any sort of care for consequences. She was starting to think of only things she wants to do. As Ven came in, he thought of an excuse to use just to confirm if Chloe was already infected. He figured he'd look for Clark even when he's not. But he also randomly came to an idea of a certain Star Wars meme and did his best Ewan McGregor impersonation. "Hello there." Chloe, feeling a little silly, went along and simply said, "General Kenobi," with a giggle. But as she turned around, she was mesmerized by what she saw. She was strangely attracted to the man, but also somewhat recalled seeing him talk to Clark once and was never seen again since. With Ven's current Lucifer charm turned on, together with Ven having some of Clark's physical traits combined with Bruce and topped it all off with the parasite inside her, she was practically seeing stars. She couldn't take her eyes off him. "Ah, a very civilized one, I see." Ven chuckled. He was very delighted that someone returned the reference. That brought Chloe somewhat back from her staring. "Chloe Sullivan. So what can I do for you?" she said with a rather flirtatious gaze. "You can call me Venerable, just wondering if you've seen Clark by any chance?" Ven replied as that was his excuse. He thought Chloe's approach can still be explained as Chloe, so he needs more to go on. "Oh, him," Chloe said coldly. "Last I heard he was busy with his date with Lana Lang." she said dejectedly. Chloe was bitter that her supposed close friend Clark wouldn't tell her about said date with Lana. And with their weird situation with Chloe having feelings for Clark and him gunning for Lana, it didn't exactly sit well with her. You know what, forget Clark for a moment. Maybe I can help you out, she said with a very sultry look in her eyes. Would you like to do some investigative reporting? That line reminded of how Chloe in the show mentioned that exact line to some random dude in the hall, and started making out with him until Clark came to look for her. Why not? What did you have in him? Next thing Ven knew, Chloe was kissing him. Yep, Chloe's infected, I think, and that means a few minutes later maybe Clark would waltz in. That would also be my cue to swipe the samples from Lex and his hired linguist. But at the moment, why don't I enjoy this first? After all, this is technically my first kiss in this world. He thought to himself. They started off with a slow, simple kiss, enjoying each other's lips. Chloe starts to really enjoy the moment. With Ven's Lucifer charm, it's starting to make her feel excited, to say the least. She starts to be a little more aggressive and starts to mix in some tongue. MMMMMH. Yes. I think you'd make great. Oh, reporter. Oh, she said in between kisses and moans. She didn't understand, nor did she care what was happening. All she knew was she was enjoying every moment of this. She used her left hand to grab Ven's hand and put it on top of her boobs over her dress. Chloe started to go full on tongue action now, and she was really on fire. She felt herself become really wet down there. She then used her free hand to cope a feel on Ven's abs. What do we have here? Someone's jacked. She ran her hands over his chest and enjoyed every single bump and shape under that shirt. Ven's body was based on Clark and Bruce after all, so his body would be literal perfection in terms of physique. Chloe excitedly jumped onto Ven and continued kissing him with a renewed passion, and had both of her hands grab onto him in a hug. She wrapped her legs behind his back and her body's excitement was going overdrive. Oh. Yes. So much better than Clark, who's only got eyes for Lana. They continued for a few minutes, enjoying each other's lips and upper bodies. Chloe enjoyed Ven's muscles while Ven enjoyed massaging Chloe's boobs over her top. But Chloe, despite being in serious heat right now, was still very curious. She wanted to know more about Ven now. So she stopped kissing him on the lips and started nibbling and licking his ear while asking, Haha. So, who exactly are you to Clark? Asterisk slurp asterisk, you don't. You don't seem like an actual student here, so what's your deal? She asked seductively. Ven remembered that this whole parasite thing wouldn't be remembered. Chloe and Pete would forget all of it after it was extracted, so he felt like talking just a bit while kissing Chloe's neck. Let's just say, I'm watching over Clark, helping him understand his biological roots. This piqued Chloe's interest. Wait, so you know Clark's biological family? They have wondered who Clark's family was, but since Clark never really liked talking about them before, she stopped asking but never got over the curiosity, only temporarily shelved. But now there's a lead, she was extremely interested. I know of them, but I don't intend to spill everything in one go. Only when it's time. But despite being very interested in the topic, she wanted to continue making out with him first. Sadly for her, they didn't have much time for now. Clark was heading towards the torch. At the moment, he's still a few doors away, but Ven could hear him from afar. Of course, he'd been keeping track of him the whole time, so he dropped Chloe back on her feet. Unfortunately, it seems I have run out of time. Looks like we'll have to continue some other day then. Ven said softly. I enjoyed every moment of this. I'll come see you again someday. He whispered to her ear not to tell anyone who he is, using the persuasion skill with his hand on her chin, and gave a quick last kiss before putting on a hood and walking out of the room. Clark saw Ven from behind, coming out of the room, but he didn't recognize who it was because of the hood, and he didn't really care since he was looking for Chloe regarding Pete. After entering the room, he saw Chloe still a bit dazed but licking her lips and moaning. Chloe? Were you just Mo? Oh yeah, I was making out with a very hot guy. What? Don't tell me you're jealous? Thought you only had eyes for Lana. Oh, I heard about your date. But of course it's not like you had the guts to tell me. Is that what this is about? Clark sighed. Don't flatter yourself, Clark. I just wanted to explore my options, take a risk. So who was that? Chloe's persuasion effect triggered, so she answered. I dunno, I met him in the hall, thought he was cute. Asked him if he wanted to do some investigative reporting. She replied while licking her lips again. She didn't want to forget the feeling immediately, so she got a lollipop snack in her drawer. So what can I do for you? Chloe asked while licking a lollipop. Meanwhile, as Ven was walking away, he thought that was a very enjoyable first. He enjoyed the sensation despite being a little weird since he was a symbiote, but he was properly connected to everything the clone body feels, so he's experiencing everything as if it were his body. He thought if first and second base was that enjoyable, he might look forward to home base. Chapter 25. The Message from Krypton. Third-person POV. After Ven confirmed Chloe was already infected, he was on his way to the caves in a superspeed sprint. He could have confirmed Chloe was infected via X-ray, but then he would skip the event. So he didn't and enjoyed himself instead. Ven quickly found the parasite samples, dead and alive, in the containers that housed them. He waited for them to load everything on the trucks before speeding in and out to take all samples and burn them all. Ven went in when the people were done loading and merely waiting for instructions from Lex. Afterwards, all he needed to make sure was the parasites in the hospital after they were taken out of Pete and Chloe were also destroyed, and he was done. Damn, I love super speed. It makes my plans super easy. Barely an inconvenience. Haha. Some days later, Clark was standing in front of his ship inside the shed. He was silent, trying to process what he learned from Virgil Swan. The man told him about the message he received from the stars. The message said, "This is Kal-El of Krypton, our infant son, our last hope. Please protect him and deliver him from evil." And the second message meant for Kal-El himself. "We will be with you, Kal-El, for all the days of your life." He heard about where the message originated, and how the planet wasn't there anymore. He feared that he was alone as the last of his kind, though at the back of his mind, he remembered the man who warned him of red kryptonite, and if he was one of them. He thought to himself, were they the last of the Kryptonians? A few minutes later, Jonathan Kent came down and saw him just standing there. "Your mother told me you were back, Clark. I know that whatever Dr. Swan told you must be overwhelming, but if you need to talk about it, your mother and I are always here." Jonathan intended to walk back up, but then Clark responded, "Ever since you told me about the ship, I wondered if there were others like me. But then I hear that my planet's no longer there, that my people are gone. I'm totally alone. Clark, you're never alone, son. This is your home and we love you very much. Come on, let's go back up." "In a minute. I figured out what this is." Then Clark shows the alien piece of technology debris that came with him to Earth. "It's the ship's heart." "Really? Have you used it yet?" "I didn't want to do it alone. Let's do it together." Clark used the octagonal key he found earlier through some sort of ringing in his ear to open the ship. By now he had already downloaded the Kryptonian information as well, so he understood now how to read Kryptonian. As the ship opened up, they saw a small space where Clark used to stay when he was but a child. "It's hard to believe you were ever that small." Jonathan smiled, nostalgic of that time. Clark inserts the debris into the slot inside the ship. It lit up messages inside the cradle. "What is it, son?" "It's a message from my biological father." "I'm sure I'm reading it wrong," Clark said apprehensively. "Why, what does it say?" The Clark translated the message for Jonathan that said, "On this third planet from the star, Soul, you will be a god among men. They are a flawed race, rule them with strength. That is where your greatness lies." Clark was appalled. He turned away from the ship with great distress. "I think I was sent here to conquer. What kind of planet am I from?" "Maybe you did misread it, Clark, but even if you didn't, it's you who decides what kind of life you're gonna lead. Not me, not your mother, not your biological parents. What if it's part of who I am? Is that the kind of person I will become?" "Clark Kent, you're here to be a force for good, not a force for evil." "But how can you be so sure?" "Because I am your father. I raised you and I know you better than anyone." As Jonathan hugged his son to comfort him, a voice from behind them suddenly spoke. "You know, you're misinterpreting the message." They saw Ven just sitting in the steps of the shed behind them with a sad smile. "Who are you?" Jonathan asks as he stands in front of his son. He was surprised and angry that someone found out about their secret, and worried what it would mean. "My name is Venerable, and don't worry. I'm not here to hurt your son." Clark interjected and whispered to Jonathan that he was the one who warned him about the red kryptonite. Jonathan understood that if he had wanted to hurt Clark, it would have been better to not warn them about the red K. But he's still very cautious since this was regarding Clark's most guarded secret. "So why are you here?" "You said something about the message," Jonathan asked. "First of all, why don't we talk inside your house instead of here in the shed? Martha needs to hear about this as well after all." Ven then stands up and walks towards the house. Jonathan's still a bit apprehensive but nods to Clark, so they follow him up and walk to the house. They then fill in Martha before they settle in the dining area as they give Ven some tea for a drink. "Thank you, Mrs. Kent," Ven says after a simple sip. "Now let's clear the confusion, shall we? No, you are not here to conquer. You were sent to survive. I'm sure Swan already told you regarding the signal's origin, yes?" "Yeah, he did. But he doesn't know why Krypton isn't there anymore," Clark replied. "Okay. Well, before anything else, I have to tell you that I don't intend to tell you everything just yet. I only intend to clarify things. Most of it, you will need to discover for yourself since that will be part of your journey." "Journey? What do you mean?" Martha asks, worried her son is going somewhere. "Oh, you know, growing up, finding your place in the world and all that. Just like a parent will sometimes keep certain things from you and allow you to discover them, make your own mistakes, learn lessons. There are some experiences that you will need to go through that I'd rather not interfere in because you need to learn from them." Clark was a little speechless since he doesn't really know yet if he agrees but decides to keep quiet. Alright, now about Krypton. So you were already told it's not there anymore. I'm here to tell you that unfortunately it is true. It was destroyed and you were sent here as a refugee. Regarding the message on the ship, well, there's a reason for that. Your biological father, or rather his pre-recorded essence, will tell you. But just so we understand, it's not to conquer. Then why was the message saying something about being a god among men? Clark asked, afraid of how it was worded. Tell me, Mr. and Mrs. Kent, if you both knew you and everyone in the planet was dying, and you had a chance to send your only son away to survive the calamity, would you send him to a place where his safety is not guaranteed? No, definitely not. They both said. Same thing. Clark's biological parents chose this planet because they knew he would be strong here, near invulnerable even, to increase the chances of his survival, to make sure their last hope lives on. Someday when you have your own children, you will understand how it feels, Clark, to make difficult choices, even willingly sacrifice yourself for your child. Most parents know this instinctively, to love their child unconditionally, that they will make choices to ensure the safety and good of their child's future. Jonathan and Martha hug each other as they understand what Ven was talking about, how much they had to sacrifice for Clark out of love. Clark looks to his parents softly. He was already told some of the sacrifices they had made to keep him safe and hide his secret as well, including cutting off a possible relationship with his grandfather, the father of Martha. Do you know why Krypton isn't there anymore? Clark hopefully asks. Yes. I don't think it's too much of a big deal to tell you this early, so here goes. Just like Swan told you, War. When you look at this world, it doesn't seem strange, doesn't it? People will have different opinions. And when some idiot takes this too far, sometimes the results are catastrophic. I mean, just look at Hitler. He had his own opinions and ideals that he wanted to force onto others. And unfortunately he had the political and military power to do so. That caused countless innocent lives. Ven paused for a bit but decided to tell him anyway. Just like him, there was once a general in Krypton named Zod. I am not aware of the specifics, but I was made aware that he was the primary reason your planet is no more. The sad thing is, he was once a friend of your father's. Chapter 24. Chloe R16 third-person POV. In the Smallville TV show, Pete and Chloe gets infected by a parasite from the Kawach caves. Chloe later acts without restraint and gets caught by Clark, kissing some random boy in the torch office. But Ven came to that office, so Chloe never got to grab one random student from the hallway. The parasite was slowly affecting her, so she was starting to care less and less about what others thought or any sort of care for consequences. She was starting to think of only things she wants to do. As Ven came in, he thought of an excuse to use just to confirm if Chloe was already infected. He figured he'd look for Clark even when he's not. But he also randomly came to an idea of a certain Star Wars meme and did his best Ewan McGregor impersonation. Hello there. Chloe, feeling a little silly, went along and simply said, General Kenobi, with a giggle. But as she turned around, she was mesmerized by what she saw. She was strangely attracted to the man, but also somewhat recalled seeing him talk to Clark once and was never seen again since. With Ven's current Lucifer charm turned on, together with Ven having some of Clark's physical traits combined with Bruce and topped it all off with the parasite inside her, she was practically seeing stars. She couldn't take her eyes off him. Ah, very civilized one, I see. Ven chuckled. He was very delighted that someone returned the reference. That brought Chloe somewhat back from her staring. Chloe Sullivan. So what can I do for you? She said with a rather flirtatious gaze. You can call me Venerable, just wondering if you've seen Clark by any chance? Ven replied as that was his excuse. He thought Chloe's approach can still be explained as Chloe, so he needs more to go on. Oh, him. Chloe said coldly. Last I heard he was busy with his date with Lana Lang, she said dejectedly. Chloe was bitter that her supposed close friend Clark wouldn't tell her about said date with Lana. And with their weird situation with Chloe having feelings for Clark and him gunning for Lana, it didn't exactly sit well with her. You know what, forget Clark for a moment. Maybe I can help you out, she said with a very sultry look in her eyes. Would you like to do some investigative reporting? That line reminded of how Chloe in the show mentioned that exact line to some random dude in the hall, and started making out with him until Clark came to look for her. Why not? What did you have in him? Next thing Ven knew, Chloe was kissing him. Yep, Chloe's infected, I think, and that means a few minutes later maybe Clark would waltz in. That would also be my cue to swipe the samples from Lex and his hired linguist. But at the moment, why don't I enjoy this first? After all, this is technically my first kiss in this world. He thought to himself. They started off with a slow, simple kiss, enjoying each other's lips. Chloe starts to really enjoy the moment. With Ven's Lucifer charm, it's starting to make her feel excited, to say the least. She starts to be a little more aggressive and starts to mix in some tongue. MMMMMH. Yes. I think you'd make great. Oh, reporter. Oh, she said in between kisses and moans. She didn't understand, nor did she care what was happening. All she knew was she was enjoying every moment of this. She used her left hand to grab Ven's hand and put it on top of her boobs over her dress. Chloe started to go full on tongue action now and she was really on fire. She felt herself become really wet down there. She then used her free hand to cope a feel on Ven's abs. What do we have here? Someone's jacked. She ran her hands over his chest and enjoyed every single bump and shape under that shirt. Ven's body was based on Clark and Bruce after all, so his body would be literal perfection in terms of physique. Chloe excitedly jumped onto Ven and continued kissing him with a renewed passion, and had both of her hands grab onto him in a hug. She wrapped her legs behind his back and her body's excitement was going overdrive. Oh. Yes. So much. Better than Clark, who's only got eyes for Lana. They continued for a few minutes, enjoying each other's lips and upper bodies. Chloe enjoyed Ven's muscles while Ven enjoyed massaging Chloe's boobs over her top. But Chloe, despite being in serious heat right now, was still very curious. She wanted to know more about Ven now. So she stopped kissing him on the lips and started nibbling and licking his ear while asking, Haha. So, who exactly are you to Clark? Asterisk slurp asterisk you don't. You don't seem like an actual student here, so what's your deal? She asked seductively. Ven remembered that this whole parasite thing wouldn't be remembered. Chloe and Pete would forget all of it after it was extracted, so he felt like talking just a bit while kissing Chloe's neck. Let's just say, I'm watching over Clark, helping him understand his biological roots. This piqued Chloe's interest. Wait, so you know Clark's biological family? They have wondered who Clark's family was, but since Clark never really liked talking about them before, she stopped asking but never got over the curiosity, only temporarily shelved. But now there's a lead, she was extremely interested. I know of them, but I don't intend to spill everything in one go. Only when it's time. But despite being very interested in the topic, she wanted to continue making out with him first. Sadly for her, they didn't have much time for now. Clark was heading towards the torch. At the moment, he's still a few doors away, but Ven could hear him from afar. Of course, he'd been keeping track of him the whole time, so he dropped Chloe back on her feet. Unfortunately, it seems I have run out of time. Looks like we'll have to continue some other day then. Ven said softly. I enjoyed every moment of this. I'll come see you again someday. He whispered to her ear not to tell anyone who he is, using the persuasion skill with his hand on her chin, and gave a quick last kiss before putting on a hood and walking out of the room. Clark saw Ven from behind, coming out of the room, but he didn't recognize who it was because of the hood, and he didn't really care since he was looking for Chloe regarding Pete. After entering the room, he saw Chloe still a bit dazed but licking her lips and moaning. Chloe? Were you just... Oh yeah, I was making out with a very hot guy. What? Don't tell me you're jealous? Thought you only had eyes for Lana. Oh, I heard about your date. But of course it's not like you had the guts to tell me. Is that what this is about? Clark sighed. Don't flatter yourself, Clark. I just wanted to explore my options, take a risk. So who was that? Chloe's persuasion effect triggered, so she answered. I dunno, I met him in the hall, thought he was cute. Asked him if he wanted to do some investigative reporting. She replied while licking her lips again. She didn't want to forget the feeling immediately, so she got a lollipop snack in her drawer. So what can I do for you? Chloe asked while licking a lollipop. Meanwhile, as Ven was walking away, he thought that was a very enjoyable first. He enjoyed the sensation despite being a little weird since he was a symbiote. But he was properly connected to everything the clone body feels. So he's experiencing everything as if it were his body. He thought if first and second base was that enjoyable, he might look forward to home base. Chapter 26. Company updates and true goals. Third-person POV. The following day, Ven heard from Gotham News that the Joker rumor was starting to go around. But with no substantial evidence or witness sightings yet, he still remains as rumors for now. A quick search regarding Central City though was that Barry was now awake, and rumors of a streak started going around. Looks like Barry has begun his journey as well, though I have to wait for after Thawne gets time erased before I even think of interacting with anyone there. Kind of a shame I can't be there to watch Barry discovers his abilities though. Would have been fun watching in person. Ven got word that the controller they developed was ready for promotions. It wasn't anything big anyway. It was just to allow playing of his games on PC via controller to keep the PlayStation feel of the game. He didn't think the experience would have been the same if it was mouse and keyboard. He then had the team start promotions for the controller and advertised that a different colored one will be available for bundle with Xenogears. Mostly a combination of dark blue and violet to match Weltal's colors. Since the game was almost done, he had the team do a simple trailer as well and allowed its promotions. While the graphics of these PS1 games he's developing aren't groundbreaking, they were of similar qualities in the games of that world. So to most people it would still be in current generation CG. Has the expansion gone well? Ven asked in an online conference meeting. Sir, we have several new teams ready for projects. We have multiple veterans shadowed by new hires. so we should be big enough to handle multiple games now. Good. I've sent the documents of several games and all the details to your email. Have it these made as well. Make sure to check the first few pages of each document first. I included a list of people I want in the project specifically. Ven made sure to get as much of the OG teams remake their games in this reality so he can still somehow give the original makers their credit, even if he's the one doing all the heavy lifting and conceptualizing everything. Sir Team 2 is already halfway in the other project, named Final Fantasy VII. And with these new projects we can have Team 3 handle this, Metal Gear Solid Team 4 on Chrono Cross. Oh, and make sure to tell Team 1 that after they complete Xenogears, including all the bug checks and game testing, to remake the whole game in first-person view. Sir? First person? How do you mean? Exactly like that. As if it was first person. I want it as an incomplete game for now. But I want them to start modifying the game itself to run as if a first-person game. But prepare all the models, textures and assets to be replaced in the future. Just have them focus on changing the combat and experimenting for now on making it first-person. Vin explains. See, what I envision for it later on is a remake of that game in extremely higher graphics, and played as a first-person view in virtual reality simulation. But the VR technology we plan to use hasn't been invented yet, so I want the team to focus on converting everything first. But have them remake it under the assumption that we will eventually reach a VR-ready game. They are quite curious as to how Ven plans to make this a reality since he mentioned the tech hasn't been invented yet, but they realize that it's his money so they can only follow orders and only give minor advices. So what engine are we going to use as a base for this remake, sir? Don't worry about that for now. Just convert the assets. We are still under talks about acquiring Potomac Computer Systems. Ven already started negotiating with them, so he can obtain the Unreal Engine earlier. In this world, Potomac never, or at least it hasn't yet, been changed to Epic Games, but for some reason their Unreal Engine was already being used not for games but hospital, engineering or military CG. Technically he only wanted to acquire Unreal Engine and go from there. Sir, we have news regarding Hiro Okamura as well. We were told that your tutors were running out of things to teach the boy. He's absorbing information at an unusually high rate that we struggle to even see him as a human now. Really, so how much does he currently know? Ven asked curiously. Sir, at his age, he's already into more advanced electronics and programming. Alright, set him up to have a few meetings with me as soon as he can. Ven wanted him to act more as a child for now, but the kid is too much of a genius. So he decided to have him try developing a proper VR machine with him. At least if the VR tech becomes a success, Hiro should get at least enjoyment out of the results. Later on, they were in a private conference and Ven explained what he wanted created. He wanted a true VR sleep state machine. Using knowledge of how he as a symbiote connects to a host's mind, how it feels and affects the host, he collaborated with Hiro and a team of neurosurgeons and scientists hired and signed with non-disclosure agreements to developing a machine that can connect with a person's mind fully, using their mindscape as sort of a lobby or entry point. Ven told them he wanted the machine to work while the user is asleep, and his mind is connected as if on a controlled dream. This was going to be a huge project since he wanted to recreate the Oasis from Ready Player One, and make all his games run in VR. Except he wanted it to be like the online novels he used to read. A full dive VR that runs while sleeping. This was his true long-term goal. He's making sure the heroes exist so he doesn't need to be one himself, though he still intends to help out in case it's a dangerous situation. He's making the Oasis his reality instead. And to do that, he had Hiro Okamura work with an entire team of support for this endeavor. If Hiro somehow manages to make this, using his knowledge of how his symbiote body connects with a host's mind, then it might be possible. Worst case scenario, he might try Kryptonian tech, or even enlist the help of Brainiac 5, who happens to come to his time period by season 10 in the show. Unfortunately, that means he's gonna have to wait that long in that scenario. There's also the possibility of asking for Cyborg's help, which is a bit earlier than Brainiac 5, so that's also another backup plan. For now at least, Hiro and his team of scientists and neurosurgeons will do. To increase the chances of success, Ven had Hiro granted access to whatever knowledge he needed, and had them recruit what specialists they would have needed. All signed under NDAs. Ven made sure the NDAs were properly in place and that the punishments were extremely heavy, as were the rewards. One way or another, Ven wants this full dive tech realized. After a long day at work and the complications of hunting metahumans, Cisco Ramon came back to his apartment and booted up his PC to catch up on some gaming and check for news on upcoming titles. Normally he would be hanging out with Barry, but this time, he was alone since Felicity Smoke was in town, and they had a double date with Iris West and Eddie Thawne. He opened up one of the gaming forums he frequented and saw the new announcements of Squaresoft regarding their new controller and upcoming title Xenogears. Square also announced that they have multiple projects in the works already, and this is merely a first one. Holy frack. Looks like Wayne Enterprises is seriously gonna dive head first into the gaming industry. Awesome. It's been so long since we got decent games. You'd think having a high-tech world that's got Star Labs would have better games, but damn. Took them long enough. Cisco checks out the teaser trailer showing both character combat and mech or gears combat, which made him excited. As a longtime geek, he enjoyed this kind of stuff. And having a huge mech included in the game excited him more. The fact that the game is an RPG also made him anticipate its launch. To explore a new world in the game would be such an exciting and fun journey. Cisco checks the release concept art of the gears posted on the website. The mechs look sweet. I would have gone a different way with the design though, but this is cool as well. Oh snap. Pre-orders are now available. All across the US and Japan, pre-orders were being done online and the numbers are climbing up. Squaresoft started panicking and started planning for possible stock shortages. They expected the hype and the number of sales, but not by this much. They totally underestimated it. Cisco could have made his own controller for the game, but he wanted to support the industry as a fan, so he pre-ordered the bundle instead. After the pre-order, he totally lost interest in the old games he was originally gonna play, so he opted to check his emails instead. He saw a particularly curious email notification from the company he was just thinking about earlier. The message was from Wayne Enterprises and a request for a project collaboration. Cisco read through the email and was shocked at first, then incredibly excited. He was being invited for a gaming device-related collaboration. It wasn't a permanent job offer, but it was related to one of his hobbies, so he was quite interested. The email didn't specify details, and he probably wouldn't until he signed the NDAs. After thinking for a bit, he decided to accept the offer and agreed to visit Gotham in a few days to meet personally with Venerable. Ven had invited him as well for the full dive VR project. Chapter 27. The day is coming. Third-person POV. At the Kent farm, Jonathan was feeding the cows while talking to Martha and Clark. First the refined kryptonite, now the caves. What does Luther want? Jonathan asks his son. I don't know, but I think we have a bigger problem. Dr. Walden can read the Krypton language. He wrote it on the ceiling at the hospital. Do you think he's figured out your secret? Is that why you're so worried now? I'm not sure, but something's going on in that cave. The symbols have changed. What does it say now, son? The day is coming, when the last son will begin his quest to rule the third planet. Clark. Don't you see? It's the quest Ven mentioned. He said not to fear it, but I can't help it. The way it was worded doesn't exactly inspire confidence. Clark said worriedly. A few days later, Dr. Walden tries to kill Clark and accidentally blows himself up instead. In the front porch of the Kent house a few days later, Martha was just starting the day when she saw Clark sitting outside. Well, you're up early. Never went to sleep. Clark, what's wrong? I kind of met my biological father last night. When I heard his voice, it was coming from the ship, but it sounded like it was from my own head. He said it was time. He said it was time for what? Jonathan asked. To leave Smallville and fulfill my destiny. He said that. I have until sundown today. Or what? I'm not sure. But he said I didn't have a choice. Why is it happening now when my life is coming together? The farm's out of debt, I'm gonna be a big brother. Lana and I are finally getting together. But Ven did say this was important, and that to not fear it, right? Martha said. Whatever your biological father may have had in mind for you, they're his hopes and dreams, not yours. Ultimately, you would still be the one to make the choice. At least it should be your choice. Jonathan told him. Clark, you choose your own destiny. Nobody can decide that for you, son. But like Ven said, are you able to live with the consequences if you deny this? Later that day, Clark found out from Lionel Luthor that he created a kryptonite replica of the key for the cave wall. He warned Lionel to be careful but did nothing and left. At sundown, Clark was really worried what would happen, so he was just in the barn staring at the sunset. But at night, when we went down to the shed, Jor-El spoke to him again. It is time, Kal-El. Come to me. You will obey me, Kal-El. You're not my father. I won't let you control me. This is the mark of your ancestors. You cannot fight it, Kal-El. At the zenith of the Star Soul, you will begin your journey. If you do not, you will hurt the ones you love most. And then Clark was branded on his chest. Clark was so freaked out and afraid that he forgot all Ven told him, and his fear took hold of him completely. He was so afraid that he chose to use the kryptonite key after stealing it from Lionel. He told Pete he planned to use it to destroy the ship. As he mustered up courage to hold the kryptonite key personally, he struggled and put the key onto the ship, which set off a chain reaction, and it imploded and then exploded in a huge blast, resulting in an energy wave that was going to hit the Kents who were driving home from Lex's wedding. In the original show, this was when Martha Kent lost their child because of Clark. But Ven had a plan to save the child. At the last moment, he used super speed to knock out Martha temporarily by bumping her in the head. Ven took her out of the car right before they hit the pole. He knew Jonathan would be fine at the impact. He just needed to prevent Martha from getting hurt in the crash. After the truck had crashed, Ven returned Martha back to the seat to make sure no one noticed and left just as quickly. Next is the doctor. I need to mimic that female doctor and make Clark believe that the baby was lost. Once Clark leaves the hospital, I can choke it up to an incorrect reading and tell them the baby was safe. He then used super speed to go Smallville Hospital, temporarily bonded with a female doctor to copy her form and waited. Clark brought Jonathan and Martha to the hospital as expected. While Jonathan was busy lecturing Clark, Ven had sneaked in and stealthily walked to Jonathan and Clark. "Mr. Kent," Ven in female doctor form said, "can you please follow me in the next room for a bit?" Ven led them both to a room across the hall to make sure they don't see the real doctor still inside the room with Martha. "Doctor, how's my wife?" Jonathan asked after he calmed himself down. "She has a mild concussion but she'll be fine." "And how is our baby?" "We don't know yet, but with an impact like that it's likely." "I'm sorry." Then Ven pretends to walk away. "Dad." Clark tries to talk to Jonathan but the man was too distraught so he was silent, ignored Clark and walked back to Martha. Clark didn't know what to do. He was feeling guilty for not telling his father what he planned to do, and it had cost them his brother. Clark just stood there not knowing what to do when Ven appeared as himself. "I told you not to fear it, Clark." Clark couldn't respond. While you may be afraid to say goodbye to your loved ones, you have to realize what Jonathan said was true. Your actions have consequences. If you had at least considered that destroying a ship that can travel galaxies would result in some form of explosion, then this could have been avoided. Just like you have to consider that with your powers, you can cause some serious harm unknowingly, so you always have to be aware of your surroundings and your choices. Clark didn't know what to say. He left and went back to the blast site. The rest of the events played like in the show. He got so upset that he stole a red kryptonite ring from the torch and his father's motorcycle. He prepared to leave Smallville and had his heartfelt goodbye to Lana. After wearing the ring, he asked Lana to come with him. Lana chose not to since Smallville was her home. She stood there crying as Clark rode off to Metropolis. Meanwhile, Ven stayed and gave the Kents an update. He told the Kents what he made Clark believe. "Why would you do that? What good could this possibly do to Clark? It will only make him feel alone and hurt." Martha was so upset, while Jonathan was relieved to hear that the baby was fine, so he couldn't process what happened yet. "Because Clark needs to understand consequences, Mrs. Kent. Like in the future I told you about, you were originally going to lose this child. I intervened to save it, but I needed to keep Clark thinking it was the same as the original timeline so he would do what he's going to do now. So he could learn from this pain." So we were actually going to lose the baby?" "Yes." The Kents were so thankful that Ven intervened the last moment so they could keep the baby, so they were full of emotion right now. "You said he was going to do something?" asked Jonathan, finally snapping out of it. "Yes, I'm sure Pete or Lana will tell you soon. But know that this had to happen because Clark needs this. Though I have to ask that whatever you hear from Pete or Lana, don't tell Clark yet about the baby. Just not yet. This is a very important time in Clark's life. To start learning about the consequences if he makes the wrong choices." Ven leaves them for now as the Kents are confused. But later they are distraught to hear from Lana that Clark ran away, and from Pete that he had worn a red kryptonite ring. They couldn't believe he would do that willingly, and it made it difficult to swallow as well about what Ven said that Clark would need to do this. And thus he would be stuck in his Red K mindset for a while. Chapter 28, Xenagir's Launch. Third-person POV. Not much is happening at Gotham at the moment. Batman's progress is slow and steady. He's trying to get used to his life now, but he's also still learning the tricks of the trade. Learning the difference between acting with the League of Shadows versus acting alone as the Batman. Harvey Dent is still relatively unknown, but he's slowly getting popular. A small group of people are starting to dress up like Batman, but they haven't done any actual crime fighting for now. Mostly neighborhood watch stuff. Ven still has plenty of time before the Dark Knight events even start, so he focused his attention on the launch for the first game. They made the game available for download online physical copies as well. The release date was set for Squaresoft's first game since being bought by Wayne Enterprises, and the lines for physical copies in game stores are all packed already with early line campers. And in barely a day, all physical copies already sold out. Others who weren't able to buy the physical one had to do it via online download instead. Luckily the controllers are sold separately as well, though they wouldn't be the bundle ones. The game also came with a demo disc for Final Fantasy VII as well. For the first day, adults, teenagers and kids alike, for the first time in a long while, went back to the world of gaming. Gotham City. Just like every other game enthusiast, after getting a copy, Barbara Gordon went home quickly and hurriedly booted up her PC, and installed the mini software for the controller support. Then she installed the game she got from the nearest game store. It's been a while since she had played any games, and she was quite curious if this new one she got could relaunch the interest for gaming once more. Her brother James also got a copy as well, and was also in his room installing his own copy. Barbara just got back from high school. She was going to college next year and she pretty much had a lot of free time at the moment. After everything was set, she started the game and was treated to the anime clip intro for Xenagir's. A spaceship in the middle of an emergency situation about to crash to an unknown planet. After the crew tried to evacuate and the captain was left behind, the captain triggered the self-destruct for some reason. The crash was portrayed to have resulted in a female survivor with long blue hair looking over the horizon of the beach she landed on. Then the game began and the player was now able to control the main character Faye. Well, this is cute, so the gameplay is mostly on chibi mode and the cinematics or cutscenes are anime form. Wow, there's a lot of details in this small village. Barbara then proceeded to talk to all the NPCs and explored the small town. When she progressed the story a bit further, the main character was told to get something from the doctor that lives on the mountain, so the main character finally traveled a bit outside and had his first battle. Wow, the battles are simply cute. It's turn-based from the looks of it. So I can hit light, medium or heavy attack. The main character is a martial artist, I guess. She then experimented with the different options in combat. Okay, the sound design is pretty fun. The combat is so far simple but enjoyable. Or so she thought. Then she saw a combo menu but nothing there at the moment, so she figured it could appear later on. It was rather simple at first, but then the story finally introduced the giant mech suits called gears. The combat for gears were same as the human forms, but something about the idea of piloting those gears made her heart beat a little quicker with excitement. A few minutes later, the player is treated to a tragic tale, and the main character leaves what remains of the destroyed village. Okay, whoa, so the points to consume for fighting can be saved and can be used in a single turn condensed. That's interesting. She then played around with the combos and figured out the status menu was already about to learn the actual combos. She realized the intricacy of the combo system, and was starting to get drawn into the story. The main character also met the heroine in the forest, and they begin their mini-adventure. Yet a few minutes later, they are given a little bit of freedom to walk around the world map to explore a bit or follow the main plot and go the nearest desert city of A. Little did Barbara know, she and most of the gamers are already drawn to the narrative of the game and barely realized that a few hours had already passed. Wow, this is fun. I was already pulled into the story and forgot the time. Looks like this is going to be an enjoyable adventure. All over the country, people are drawn back into the world of gaming that they left behind. And the following day reviews came out and these entertainment-starved people sung nothing but praises. Yo, the new Squaresoft game is pretty cool. Hell yeah, brah. I love the gear designs. A mech is a man's romance. Hey, it can be a girl's too, you know. Have you guys unlocked the combos yet? There's so much combos we can learn by repeated execution of the corresponding combinations. Seriously? Damn, I didn't realize how to learn it. So that's why my combo meters aren't rising up. Hey, anyone else enjoying the exploration? I heard from those who already got pretty far that there are hidden locations in the world map with powerful stuff. Dude, Ramses is annoying. +1. +2. Having so much fun on the tournament arc, yo. Hey, no spoilers. I haven't reached that far yet. What about the demo, you guys try it yet? I did. It was also damn interesting. Looks like the story is unique as well, although it looks like it's a totally different world. Looks kinda steampunk design thing. Too bad the demo's pretty short, but then again it is just a demo. Someone send help. I think I am getting addicted. Feels like the game is centered on its narrative and story, though the gameplay is undeniably fun as well. I have a feeling this is gonna relaunch the interest in gaming. I hope they can keep producing quality work though. Hey, turns out later in the game you can get an airship in Xenogears and fly wherever. Spoilers. Hey spoliers. Ban Hammer please. Meh. I'm more of a fighting game kinda guy. I hope they release some of that genre as well. I don't know why, but Seitan Yuzuki seems kinda hot. What did you guys think of the music? I actually found myself listening to some of the background music without doing anything every now and then. Yo, they went all out on the voice acting as well, huh? Glad it's not all red till you die, LMAO. Anyone know who the singer for the main theme was? I haven't reached the ending yet, so I can't check the end credits. LOL, yeah. That voice was immaculate. Catchy too. I think I'm gonna keep an eye on that singer and check for more of her works myself. Hey, Squaresoft just made a new post on their website. They just announced a bunch of new titles with different game genre. New. My allowance isn't enough for all of this. Shut up and take my money. Looks like we eatin' good boys. For the next few weeks, schools and some workplaces of gamers all around talk nothing else but the new game. Either strategies or progress, even story discussions, even the generally grim Gotham is looking a lot more cheerful than usual. The players were also quite surprised at how long the game runtime was. Most games in their world were quick games or casual ones you can play on the go. This is one of the first, if not the very first game to be a full RPG with hours and hours of total playtime. This was a narrative and adventure. A game they needed to play for a long time for the experience, and they are loving every moment of it. Meanwhile, other game companies saw the sales and the hype. They realized that the game industry might get back on its feet. But they also realized that they need to up their quality. They can't stay making casual or short games anymore. From then on, a new trend was made of game devs making RPGs and story-driven games. The race was on for joining this new wave of gaming. Chapter 29, Full Dive VR Pod Prototype. Third-person POV. In the Flash, when the team started to question Dr. Wells, they were able to build a lucid dream device viewer to help Cisco rewatch his alternate timeline memories. But with Ven's requirements, the events were vastly accelerated. And compared to that timeline, since it was created earlier, they weren't very pressured and had a lot of leeway to coordinate and get some opinions from Dr. Wells and Caitlin. So this will allow people to see into their dreams. Cisco. I got the idea from a journal article on lucid dream therapy. They think it can be used to help people suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. The theory is that it will allow people to objectively enter their dreams and face their fears. Still working on the talking part. Oh, the amount of electricity required to trigger lucid dreaming is harmless. Probably. Caitlin. And lucid dreaming will help the doctors better understand their fears. Of course, you still need to guide the patient from the outside, right? Direct them to specific aspects of the dream. Dr. Wells. We're still working on a communications interface. Cisco. When we dream, the middle brain lights up with electrical activity, whereas the higher brain remains dormant. Once we find a way to make both parts of the brain active, then it's just a matter of finding the frequency that will stimulate the language center. Dr. Wells. Then the dreamer could speak. He could describe his dream. Caitlin. I would try a frequency of 45 Hz to start. Dr. Wells. Thank you, Dr. Wells. Cisco. Well, you never cease to impress me, Caitlin. Dr. Wells. The glasses are emitting a low-level delta wave which should help fall asleep. Caitlin. I just sent the data to Hero now. He should be able to use this and convert it for the project requirements. If needed, I can go to Metropolis and help with the research in person for a few days. Cisco. The full dive VR pod was surprisingly easy for the combined genius of Cisco and Hero. Cisco alone was already enough. This was evidenced by the lucid dream viewer he and Caitlin made to peer into his alternate timeline memories. But with Hero, the device was vastly improved, and they were able to figure out several safety protocols in order to avoid the possible SAO anime scenarios that Ven told them about. So instead of the goggles or a standard VR eyewear, they were able to create the full dive VR pod. It was made to be really comfortable as a bed, contained the tech necessary for full dive, has several emergency exit protocols and the temperature regulator in case the brain overheats due to excessive brain activity or any temperature-related situations. Of course, Ven made sure it was impossible to use the device to hurt the user intentionally. He required the emergency exit protocols both internally in-game, inside the pod and externally via third-party emergency eject. With the full dive pod prototype ready for testing, the next step was creating the first VR environment. The team Ven hired from this world's Unreal Engine team started improving the software, already to reach more realism. And with unlimited resources and funding, they were progressing a lot faster. By now Ven had several teams both in Japan and the US. But all these departments and expansions are getting harder to keep track. Ven decided to create a separate branch from Wayne Enterprises entirely. So V.Games Inc. was created as a separate entity, and all the companies related to his gaming plans were connected legally to V.Games. A few days before launch, so Xenogears contained the new logo in the launch screen. The main office Ven chose was in Metropolis as that was the most stable city he could think of in the age of superheroes. Of all the cities, the one protected by Superman had the highest success of safety and probable survivability. It was also where Ven moved Hero and his newer teams. Ven then decided to have a separate team to start working on his first prototype of his version of the Oasis from Ready Player One. At first Ven wanted it to start with a massive futuristic hotel. Nothing outside the building just yet. The hotel would then have a massive lobby for players to hang out or dine. And players would be able to rent rooms where they have their own PCs that could access their games. Ven planned to pay for distribution rights so anyone inside the rooms would be able to play any game made by other game companies as well. Ven also decided that any full VR games would require the players to enter some sort of portal to launch the game from within his Oasis. An example would be to play older games via hotel room PCs and newer VR games by going to ship ports right outside the hotel, riding a sort of spaceship that would then take the players to that game planet or game world. In the case of Xenogears, the ship would take them to that game's world and start or continue the journey from there. Though single-player games would be a bit different. A single-player game planet would separate each individual player to their own pocket dimension, so they could play the game as intended. But for multiplayer games, several players can land on those planets to play said games. For the time being, since not all of the tech is invented yet, a team was already working on the base foundation of the Oasis Hotel lobby for the prototype and proof of concept. Alright, so initial login test number 1. Ready? Hero asked. Ven himself was doing the initial test so he can give specifics on any differences against what final effect he wants compared to his experience as symbiote bonding and mindscape accessing. Link synchronize. The next thing Ven sees is his VR representation of the base player model standing in the entrance of the hotel lobby. He didn't walk anywhere, he just did a few steps, sprint, touched the textures of the objects and start checking for collisions. The touch simulation seemed to be working properly, and the collision seemed to be following the mesh textures. I can feel the carpet and the textures of the furnitures. Then he proceeded to test all the emergency exits and log out. Everything seems to be working just fine, so he moved to the next problem of developing the actual game worlds to work with the core system. Since Ven gave the Xenogears team a heads up, it was fairly simple to make the new version work with the Oasis prototype. But they are taking their time to flesh out the new game mechanics. After all, playing as turn-based on third-person view was vastly different compared to first-person VR. Ven also required all teams to start converting all the games to VR, but only after the games were officially released first in case they would still need to do some last-minute patch fixes. So now that we have the base foundation tech ready, I want several teams working on building the main city first. Then create several spaceports for ships that are supposed to send players to game worlds. Sir, did you say a city? We will be modeling an entire city. To begin with, yes. But I want an entire planet eventually. We're just starting small, said Ven. So it's completely going to be fully explorable? Yes. Make sure to program the base character copy what players actually look like as a default but give on some simple modifications. But I want the really premium looks and clothing to be earned via internal currency. Ven wanted to have players develop an economy inside the game as well, so he planned to start selling in-game clothing, accessories and transportation. Other objects can be earned via the game they wish to play. For example, they want a gear/mech from Xenogears. If they want to port that over to the main planet, they need to convert the asset to work outside that particular game. But Ven had it designed in such a way that it will simply be copied and produced outside of the game after they earn the object in-game, and pay a little currency. That way they can use those objects or devices in the main planet to have fun. After all, Ven still vividly remembers how cool the Oasis looked when he watched Ready Player One. Sir, if we pull this off, this is going to be historical. This is going to change gaming forever. Exactly. I also want everyone to send any ideas that could improve our concept to their team leads. Ven also planned to start thinking about the servers going to be used for this kind of MMOVR world, and he understands that it needs to be seriously high capacity, so he planned to get Clark's help and use Kryptonian tech. But he still has to wait for Clark to even create the fortress before he can utilize some of its tech. So for now, he has to make do with what he can use here and now. Another angle he is planning for is the security of the game world. He wants it to be perfect so it will be virtually unhackable. So Ven is also currently keeping an eye on Victor Stone. The moment he gets used to his new body and power, he's going to try and hire him for the job. Chapter 30 Game Industry. Third-person POV. A few weeks since Xenogears' launch and the sales are still going up. A few game companies have started to copy the way Xenogears was made, making their own RPG adventure game, hoping that they would get as much sales as V.Games did. And some companies are still on the wait-and-see strategy if this will be a one-off or if they can maintain this momentum and quality. But no one can deny that the first release since Wayne Enterprises extended their hands is quite the explosive venture. Several companies are now watching over all the recent purchases and expansions of Wayne Enterprises and V.Games. Since the release was on PC, which was widely used in the modern age, everyone who was the least bit interested could get a copy. They were not limited to a console machine that was dedicated to that function only. So the market was much wider than any single console platform could ever reach. Normally it would take game devs a long while to fully create an entire game from scratch. But with Ven already knowing what the game looks like as a final product, a lot of experimenting and brainstorming has been skipped. And with the amount of resources Ven had as billionaire Bruce Wayne, V.Games was able to develop all of the games extremely quickly, so Ven kept on writing and drawing the games he remembered while the company kept on making them. It reached the point where they were ready to launch the other games. Since this was just a temporary thing for Ven, he didn't really mind the comments or reactions of people. At least not for these games. He was more concerned about his future goals. Once the games were finished and tested, Ven immediately ordered them to be launched, which surprised a lot of people, his own staff included. Normally, they would need to market the games for maximum profitability and release them in such a way to not interfere with the company's other products. But for some reason, Ven ordered all finished games to be launched and sold, so they did. Several companies started questioning why V.Games did this mass release, but for some reason, the public actually accepted it quite well. More and more gamers were buying the products that the earnings were way more than the expenses, thus paying for itself. To gain these much profits didn't really matter to Ven, but to other companies watching, this was a green light of sorts. The numbers were reaching high numbers that multiple people tried to reach out wanting to invest. Except V.Games never really needed them. Having Wayne Enterprises behind them, they had all the funding they would ever need for several lifetimes. So these investors went to competitors instead. Some were trying to invest on them, but others were trying to outright buy game companies, hoping to follow V.Games' footsteps. But because of the high numbers recently, the game companies started to second-guess selling as their stocks went higher. One such person who tried buying out another game company was Roman Sionis. He was born to wealthy and self-absorbed parents, who cared more about their social status than their own son. His parents' hypocrisy had a deep impact on Roman, and he grew to resent them. When he met and fell in love with working-class model Circe, his parents did not approve of the relationship and forced him to break it off. Roman burned down his family mansion and inheriting their fortune and business. Roman lacked his father's business acumen, and would have eventually ruined Janus Cosmetics by funding a failed line of face paint, makeup that would create a product that was rushed to the market without proper testing. But because of the high numbers in the reports he received about V.Games, he was tempted to follow in Ven's footsteps, so he bought out a competitor company. As it turns out, he was able to buy this world's Electronic Arts. In Ven's original world, EA Games was well known for being a shit company that only focuses on cash grabs and loot box scams. Here, Roman decided to buy it and focus on sports games since he knew nothing of RPGs in the first place. He had his own teams focus on shooters and sports instead. Since they didn't have Ven's advanced knowledge of final product games, they had to do things the old-fashioned way. But since they didn't focus on narrative games, they didn't take very long. And since Roman was trying to join in on the hype, he poured a lot of resources to rush his games. So they were out in the market just shortly after V.Games mass-released games. Because of this, they were able to grab some attention and gain quite a bit of sales as well. And just like that, without really knowing about it, Ven unintentionally eliminated the birth of Black Mask as a crime lord. Instead of being a ruthless mob boss, he became a semi-successful game company owner. But since they focused on these types of games and avoided narrative-driven ones, Ven was able to swipe the rights for Star Wars games. At first Ven expected few others would have followed his actions to buy game companies, but he didn't realize it would be this fast. He was pleasantly surprised to be able to get the rights for Star Wars, but then realized there are a lot of rights he wanted to obtain as well, so he went to work acquiring multiple IP's rights. Ven negotiated for popular movies distribution in games as well. He remembered how many references there were in Ready Player One. He also decided to have movie theaters made near the Oasis prototype hotel, though his main motive was recreating the film so one could play as the main characters of the movies. That one would take a while before being implemented, as it will take a lot of time to recreate movies and plan for interactive experiences. But he was satisfied with having movie theaters or digital copies in the game for now. Since no one really knew his plans, none of the movie studios thought how big of a deal this was that Ven was buying these distribution rights. So Ven got the rights in fairly low amounts. Well, low compared to how much it would have been if they knew. If they had known how important these were, they would never have sold it to Ven at practically pennies compared to what they could have earned. Ven tried to recall as many details as he could regarding features or pop culture references he wanted rights to. He did as many preparations he could so the Oasis would have smooth sailing without any hiccups. While he was doing this, several companies started noticing this but simply thought he was getting way too greedy. They assumed V.Games intended to recreate movies as game adaptations, but decided it wasn't worth paying attention to since the IPs they were buying have been off the big screen for some time. So they thought the hype was done, and was no longer worth doing since most movie-to-game adaptations are released close to the screening dates. Yet some chalk it up to Bruce Wayne being Bruce Wayne. These people thought Wayne was just spending his practically infinite money on whatever caught his eye. Chapter 31. Games. Third-person POV. Guys, Chrono Cross is pure art. This is a freaking masterpiece. Must play. Who made the music for this? It was absolutely beautiful. Final Fantasy VII is really well thought out and deep. Lots of heartbreaking moments as well. Why did they kill Aerith? Damn it. Tifa is so damn hot. I don't care what anyone says. She's my dream wife. Team Clarith. No. Team Clody. Screw that. I'm Team Threes. LOL +1. +2. Why'd they name is 7? What the hell happened to 1 to 6? Dude, Metal Gear is something new. It makes you feel like some secret spy or something. Sneak strategy was something I didn't know I needed. LOL, this made me double-check random boxes in warehouses now, haha. I can't believe V.Games had this much masterpieces mass-released. Yeah, I thought this would be quantity versus quality, but damn. The mass release of the games was practically Christmas come early for all the gamers. The boom reignited the imagination of the people in this world. The stagnating creativity started moving again. Other game companies started taking notes and copied the format. They started developing several stories of their own, though not as deep or well thought out. It was a beginning. Some smaller game companies simply make parroted versions in hopes of joining the wave and earning as a cash grab. Some choose to hire several writers and truly attempt to make their own games. Just like the time Ven's Earth had a bloom of so many games, most being mere low-quality copies or rip-offs, this also happened here. While this isn't necessarily good, it at least showed how much interest there is in gaming again. Meanwhile, at V.Games' office, Ven started making a team-developed GTA and Pokemon. While GTA is fairly straightforward, he wanted Pokemon to become something more. In his world, Nintendo kept holding Pokemon back. It was a massive hit on its first few generations. Nintendo was very slow in terms of innovation to the point that the franchise looked like it was an entire decade behind in terms of features, gameplay, and graphics. The Pokemon titles were always a copy-paste of the previous generation, with some added 100 or more Pokemon each version. But the gameplay was never improved. The graphics remained the same, mostly due to hardware limitations that Nintendo never seems to improve much. Ven wanted to make the game a bit more each generation. He intended to try and improve it. Though as a first-generation launch, he chose to stick with Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green versions, but instead of the Game Boy Advance or SP look in pixels, he chose to have it in the same look as Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire and intended to have the first few generations in that look. Another thing he chose to improve on was the Pokemon battle backgrounds. He wanted to at least have the backgrounds reflect where the player was. Ven also decided to have the online trading and battles available. But at the same time as developing these, Ven had an adjacent team work side by side with the main Pokemon team to create a full 3D version intended for VR in preparation as well. While he generally advises teams to make a VR version in preparation only after the actual game was finished and ready for launch, he had the ones for Pokemon animated side by side with the base game so there would be consistency, as well as a lot of time to model everything in 3D. He remembered a long time ago watching the movie Detective Pikachu and thought he liked the realistic look, so he wanted those created for the 3D version. Since those would take a lot of time to model, he already had a team started. A minor change he made though was the catchphrase "gotta catch 'em all." He chose to remove it completely since logically, one person can't take care of all that Pokemon at the same time. Most of the time, the rest are going to be stuck in storage, which he didn't think was nice. So he altered Professor Oak's requirement of catching to just battling those Pokemon once in order to record them in the Pokédex. So the player isn't required to catch them all like a lunatic. Sir, compared to other games we launched and are making so far, this looks like it has potential to become massive. The merchandise alone. Exactly why these Pokemon creatures are made to be cute looking. Well, most of them. Anyway, I want you to make sure we have several toy companies in the loop so we can have multiple merchandises. Though let's start with just stuffed toys for now and expand if the IP takes off. But isn't this 170 Pokemon a little much? Are you sure we need this many creatures? Yes. And that's just the beginning. In later versions we can expand the number bit by bit. But it helps that there's a lot of variety to make that world feel alive. On another matter, sir, we have Mr. Cisco Ramon contacting us again. He keeps trying to request being added as an alpha or beta tester for the full dive project. While his original purpose was developing its base functions and overall development of the technology, he requests to be part of the game side as well. What do you think we should do? That's fine, since he helped greatly on developing the tech with Hero. You can have them both given access when we start alpha tests for the base Oasis world. Since it's in their personal interests as well, they might have insights that could make it better. We've also begun testing the tastes, skin sensations, pleasure and pain simulations for it. From the looks of the initial testing, we're getting close to a proper realistic simulation. But how high are we going to set the pain simulation? Leave it at maximum 30% for now. I don't want the players to be traumatized after all. We also don't know if feeling pain in game would have lasting effects, so it's better to leave it at that. Sir, are we, going to add R18 content as well? Put it in, but make sure we have proper protocols to censor it for anyone under 18. I want any action deemed R18 be auto-censored. But anyone deemed above 18 would be able to do such actions, but only in private areas, not public areas. Since the pod should do a proper scan for the player anyway, there should be no way for underage players to bypass censor protocols. So we have to simulate the actual feeling of sex as well? And anything in between. Yes, but it's not a priority. Leave it for the last part of the list. Prioritize simulating taste for food consumption in game. While people won't actually feel full by eating, at least we can make them taste cuisine that most people normally can't afford. Next should be the feeling of gravity, lack of gravity and freefall simulation. So we can do all sorts of theme park rides as well. Sir, this is going to be so massive. I think this indeed would change the world, even beyond just gaming. Of course. Also make sure we have a separate department for modeling and animating a complete human body so we can use a separate program for medical professions like surgeons in training. This way they can make all the mistakes in games so they only make correct actions in the real world. That's genius. I didn't even think of that sector. We'll get right on that as well, sir. After Ven's meeting, he went back to monitoring Clark's Red K escapades. It seems like the Kents are almost ready to make a move, so I might be stepping in pretty soon. Chapter 32. End of Red K. Clark. Third-person POV. Kawach Caves. Jonathan Kent was fed up waiting for Clark to come home. His robberies were getting more and more pronounced that he was worried someone would find out who he was, as Clark was openly using his abilities to go wild. He went to the caves with the key to try and talk to Jor-El, but as he found the cave wall where the slot for the key was, he was unable to do anything since it was still somehow sealed. He wasn't ready. But you had to keep pushing him anyway, didn't you? What kind of a race are you people? No wonder you destroyed yourselves. He was so upset that he just threw the key to the ground when suddenly the Kryptonian markings lit up and he was suddenly able to speak to him. I am Jor-El, the true father of Kal-El. His name is Clark Kent. I am his father. I raised him. You have fulfilled your function in Kal-El's destiny. His destiny is whatever he makes of it. His destiny is too great for you to comprehend. This was Kal-El's first test to see if he was ready to begin his journey. He's too young. He needs more time. This phase of Kal-El's journey is almost complete. It will be of no consequence if he returns to you for now. You'll bring him home? If you want him, you must retrieve him yourself. I can tell. He is too powerful. Are you willing to sacrifice anything to get him back? Yes. For my son, I'll do anything. So be. Wait. Who are you? A friend. Someone who's just looking out for Kal-El. You have Kryptonian cells, yet you are not. Your biology seems foreign. Doesn't matter, I've come to make a deal. I'll bring him back. Jonathan can't handle this. His human body would give out if you give him abilities just to bring Kal-El back. And I'll also ensure to look out for him should he stray from the path. I know you want him to go through these trials, but I'll make sure he at least survives should it be dangerous to him as well. Regardless if he passes or fails these trials, I'm sure you don't want any harm to come to him either. So what do you wish in return? I want access to the fortress and its technology. Look, I know how important his destiny is, so I don't intend to hinder it. But I do have my own plans, and in exchange for being your safety margin for his trials, I want Kryptonian knowledge and technology. You ask much, but if I am to grant you this, I would need more than your offer. What do you want then? That you extend your help to not only keep him alive from the trials, that you remain his safety margin for the first 10 years of his life after he completes his training, and that any knowledge you obtain will not be used to bring harm to Kal-El. Done. Then the deal has been struck. The moment the fortress is built, you will have access to the knowledge it contains. The lights died down and the cave goes silent. What was all that about? Why did you stop me? Because if you gone through this, you would have died. So what? If it could bring my son back, I would have given anything. Jonathan didn't really care since he was already so desperate. Then what about Clark? What about after your death? Did you not think this would have destroyed him that he already is? If you died because of his mistakes, Clark Kent may never truly return. And Martha would be alone to raise your newborn. He wasn't able to refute since he wasn't really thinking clearly anymore. So what, you used this moment to strike a deal with Jor-El to get something out of it? Of course I did. I mean, Jor-El's the only one getting what he wants for a while now, right? Might as well get something out of him for once. So what fortress? What was that all about? Well, if Clark needs to be trained for his destiny, to gain his education, you didn't think he'd be doing all of that here in a very public cave, did you? At some point, a fortress will be made containing all the knowledge of Krypton, and Clark will learn what he needs to learn there. In a safe and secluded environment so no one gets hurt or exposes his secret. I just wanted access to it. Plus you heard the man. Voice. I can't use it to harm Clark ever, so don't worry about it. At least this way, Clark still has a father. Ven then went to Metropolis in the place of Jonathan Kent. In the show, this was when Jonathan got powers to stop Clark. But the temporary powers came at a huge cost to him, which would have claimed his life. So Ven took his place. In Luthor Corp Lionel Luthor's office, Clark was stealing an object from Morgan Edge. After he obtained it, as he was about to leave, a man stood in front of him. How'd you find me? Jor-El. You two are working together now, huh? That's cute. But I didn't listen to him, and I'm certainly not gonna listen to you. You need to put all this behind you. Come on home to the people who love you. Clark, you don't know how dangerous you are when you're wearing that ring. It's not the ring, I was born this way, they just can't accept it. Think you can stop me? You're coming with me. Now. Insert fight here. Mom. Clark. Martha hugged his son as she cried. I'm so sorry. For everything. For the baby. The baby's fine, Clark. What? Then. That was all me. I made you think that. Ven interjected. Clark was angry but held back because he needed answers. Why? Because you needed to see what your reckless decisions would have done. You could have hurt your family, Clark. And you chose to put on that ring. Nobody made you. As a result, you went wild in Metropolis. You needed to understand how you making reckless choices and losing control could do to yourself and others. So the baby really is. Alright? In the original timeline, no, your recklessness would have killed the baby. But because I interfered, the baby is fine. But it's not just the baby's life that hang in the balance. Your father was going to be given powers by Jor-El to bring you back. But his body wouldn't have handled it, so after bringing you back, it would have been only a matter of time before his heart gave out. He would have died. Clark was so stunned that he couldn't speak. He was having a hard time accepting that he not only endangered the baby, but also almost killed his own father. Clark was brought to tears and hugged his dad. I'm so sorry, Dad. I wasn't thinking. The important thing is, Clark is back at home with us now. Jonathan replied. Since they were having a moment, Ven decided it was time for him to leave. From here on out, Ven had quite a bit of time from Clark duty. He recalls that there's nothing he needs to interfere in or anything noteworthy, until that whole event where a native from the Kawach tribe obtains powers and stabs Clark. In the show, Jonathan heals Clark using powers from Jor-El, but since Ven prevented that to save Jonathan's life, he needs to do the healing instead. Since that was about the end of that season, Ven can do some other things for the time being. Chapter 33, Pokemon and Social Media. Third-person POV. Ven was busy enjoying the game recreation versions in his room in Wayne Manor. Since release of his games, the gaming industry has begun a new boom, so he also checks out other companies' games. Though none of them so far are in the same quality as his, some of them have enjoyable quick gameplays. He received an email from his staff that the Pokemon recreations were done. It has been a few months after all. As he head out, he used his super speed to run to Metropolis. Lately I've been using it a lot and I have to admit, it's too much fun. But sooner or later I have to get on to the flying to prepare for healing Clark. So I have to practice that soon enough. Ven thought to himself. As he arrived in Metropolis in some random alley near his office headquarters, he starts to walk out and pretend he just got there so the CCTVs would not catch him using his speed. After arriving in the office, he immediately obtained the copy for Pokemon and begun his own testing, but more like he just wanted to play it again. Since this version looked like Pokemon ORAS but is actually Leaf Green and Fire Red, he was quite excited to play the classic first-gen game. But it sure felt to him like a new game or remake considering the graphics is a little better than the original Red and Green versions in Game Boy. As always, I choose Charmander for my starter, haha. Damn, this is so nostalgic. Ven proceeded to go through his initial run in the game and most of the features are the same as Fire Red and Leaf Green, so it's literally just him replaying the game in a bit more graphics. After a couple of hours enjoying the game, he decided to discuss with his team regarding the future VR version of this game. So he held a meeting with some of his staff. Alright, the game itself is already completed and satisfactory to my requirements. But as you all know, I intend to have all my games eventually converted to VR for the future as well. But since this is also a turn-based game, I would like to get your opinions for the VR gameplay. Ven told them. Sir, what if we make it an action RPG? Maybe make the battles real-time. Staff 1. Interesting, but how will that work exactly? Staff 2. Well, instead of Pokemon taking turns when they fight, it becomes that, an action RPG so they fight real-time. Staff 1. But how do players control the Pokemon then? Do we have the players shout their every move? Staff 3. That might be one way to go about it. Or we can try having the player get kind of like telekinetic control over the Pokemon only during battles. Staff 1. Or we can put AI into Pokemon during battles so they have general programmed behavior based on their species, but allow players to shout 4 specific moves only so they can use those commands when they see an opportune moment. Staff 4. That last one might be the closest one to the original concept of the game considering the in-game story. But the other methods might be interesting, so why don't you all develop all of them for now and we can pick later after we try everything out? For now, develop that last one as main candidate. But as an alternative number 2, use the telekinetic control for all movements in battle, and add in more options if you think of any, then we can discuss after trying it out in testing. And are the stuffed toys ready for shipment? Ven. Understood. And yes sir, the Pokemon stuffed toys are produced already and ready for shipment. As you wanted, we made only a few of the Pokemon for now, namely Pikachu, Charmander, Squirtle, Bulbasaur, Clefairy, Sandshrew, Dratini, Eevee and Vulpix. The rest are on a custom order basis. We already have contracts with several toy stores, so they will be on sale a week after our game's release. Staff 3. On another note, the base world of GTA has also been completed. But are you sure we will be allowing all sorts of crimes in this game, sir? Isn't this like a bad influence? Staff 1. Not really, I think it's even more important to make something like this as an outlet for people's intrusive thoughts so they don't actually do it in real life. Let them do all that crap in game instead. But it's not like we will simply allow them to do anything. We still have police chasing them when they do crime in game, so we can still portray consequences. Ven. While Pokemon by Nintendo was originally released on a handheld device, Ven still chose PC so it has a more wider reach, and to remove the hardware limitations. He thought of having a version for phones, but this world's phones aren't just there yet. So he held off on it for now. But one thing Ven never noticed before was that this world didn't have social media platforms yet. No Facebook or Twitter, not even that old Friendster thing. The ones they had were mostly forums or personal pages and blogs. Then again, it was still quite early in the timeline, so Ven thought it just wasn't developed yet. Ven thought it was a little weird considering Cisco mentioned Facebook in the first episode of Flash in the show, yet it didn't exist here yet. So maybe he checked some random CCPD database instead for Barry's choice in music. But since he was planning to launch his full dive VR Oasis anyway, he thought, what if he created his own social media platform that will tie into his Oasis? So he pondered for some time and decided to create his own, but had 2 separate page types. Each account can create a strictly social page and an alternative gamer page for those who will be playing in the Oasis. So he got his staff to get some programmers and created his own social media platform, which he named DC World. He thought it would be his own inside joke that no one would get unless they are from a world like his. He made it a bit more like Facebook since he didn't really like most of the limitations Twitter had. Since he already had the entire platform figured out in his head, coding the thing didn't take long, so practically in a few short days it was already completed and available online quietly for the time being. He made all his employees make pages but told them not to put private information like addresses or credit cards or anything. He told his employees that it was mostly to connect people with likes, dislikes or hobbies. He made sure they understood that any personal information would not be posted to avoid being misused. The game page was only half unlocked since the VR wasn't even public yet. So for now it had mostly categories for PC games. But in the future, it would contain their VR games or frequently visited planets in the Oasis. While he didn't launch it officially or loudly, the site took off immediately considering how many people already worked for him. Even just internally speaking, His employees already saw the appeal of it and started making their own pages filled with stuff that interests them. But because people would normally have families, those employees told their families, then it eventually spread. In a matter of weeks, DC World had thousands and thousands of people with their own pages. The moment it was discovered by one of the popular kids in any of the high schools, it was bound to spread like wildfire. Even in Smallville, most of the people already created their pages. V-Games also created an outgoing link in their website to connect to their DC World page, so most gamers already created their pages as well. While the rest of the world would take a bit of time before they get into this whole social media thing, at least the younger generations would already be in it. This actually made it a bit easier for people like Batman as well if they ever need to look a bit into some kids, for example. If people like Batman needed to investigate about a certain kid, instead of doing the old-fashioned way like actually going in person and talking to several people, it's much more simple to check their profiles to see their hobbies and interests. While these do not contain personal information, it's at least a bit of a preview into their personalities. Multiple small businesses also started making their own pages, considering it's much easier to create a page there instead of paying for their own domain and setting up a website that may or may not even get any attention. To Ven, this was nothing but a minor thing since he was used to it, but to the rest of the world here, this was a big step in terms of connecting with people using the internet. Since this was still relatively new, he didn't expect any followers yet apart from his own employees, but apparently, most of the gaming community already followed him since his name was, of course, already getting very popular for this new game industry boom. Guys, this DC World is pretty interesting. Before, we just post in forums like this, but with DC World, it's much more direct to friends and connecting to communities. Definitely. I already followed a lot of my communities like gaming news and tech today. Like for real. I only signed up so I can see what the girl I like has for hobbies, but damn, it makes it fun to follow my own likes and interests as well. Same. I wanted to check out the hot guy from our school, but now I can see his likes as well, so I have something to talk about with him later. It doesn't seem like celebrities have gotten on this thing yet, so that's too bad, but at least I can connect with my fan group here. We made a group page for certain celebrities' fans. You guys hear about the fake pages thing? What fake page thing? I saw an article saying some people tried to make pages for other people pretending to be them, but somehow it gets deleted shortly after. Maybe they have some sort of team investigating the authenticity or something, I dunno. Wow, it's good that you can't make a page that's not you. Identity theft is a crime after all. Of course the creator himself would have a page already. I literally just tried to search for him and voila. He's already got thousands of followers, haha. Oh cool. I just checked it out as well, and he just posted his next game. Are game devs supposed to be this hot? Damn. How enviable, rich, successful and good looking. Ven. Let me have your babies. DM me. LOL. Ven's page consisted mostly of the games he had created. But since creating DC World, his first post was regarding the release date of Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. It was a selfie of him holding a disc copy of the game and the caption included the release date. Chapter 34. Learning to Fly. Third-person POV. Wayne Manor Garden. Ven was silently standing and concentrating. He was busy trying to see if he can feel the gravity around him. Since being able to mimic Superman cells, he was now able to see all sorts of radio waves or anything normally not visible to normal human eyes. But he mostly ignores it as he does not even fully understand what all of those are yet. But now, he is only focusing on trying to float. It didn't really take him very long to be able to fly. As he remembered the show Smallville, it mostly portrayed as Clark unable to fly due to his own psychological limitation since he was afraid of his Kryptonian heritage, hence grounding him. But for Ven, the moment he awoke and realized he was no longer human, he didn't really think too much about trying to be normal, nor was there anything holding him back apart from his weaknesses. The moment Ven felt the gravity around him being unable to hold him down, he lifted above the ground mere inches just from his will alone. Before doing anything drastic like jumping off to the sky, he wanted to understand it first. To realize if it can be turned off, since it would be weird if he couldn't. It would have been like being underwater in a pool trying to walk normally when the water makes you float. After getting the hang of being held by gravity and being free from it, he was starting to feel a little more confident and started floating across the garden. From afar, it only looked like Ven was running in a weird posture back and forth, but upon closer look, he was floating above the ground mere inches. Okay, this is getting kind of fun. Like I'm skating on ice, but I don't have my feet on the ground, haha. Ven thought to himself. So I can will myself to move in any direction and the speed is controllable too. But somehow when I will it, the gravity can be turned off and on. So I can float then turn off gravity to let me fall naturally. Ven started to practice flying around the garden and tried doing sharp turns as well. He flew a few inches above ground but across the garden as if he was on a go-kart attacking a racetrack. Yep, definitely fun. Though this reminds me of racing games. Come to think of it, GTA does have a bit of focus on cars as well, but why don't I combine it with Need for Speed and have some sort of a game mode within GTA? Or should I have it totally separate as a game after all? Maybe I can discuss that with my staff later on. After getting used to obstacles and maneuvers, Ven decided to practice dodging backwards and sidewards while floating. Okay, I've stalled enough. I really should start trying the actual vertical ascension. Come on. I can do this. Ven hyped himself. After crouching and posing like Henry in Man of Steel, he willed himself to blast off upward. But he made sure not to go all out in fear of destroying the garden. Ven flew upwards to about the same as a 20-floor building before he stopped and held his position. Holy shit. Holy freaking shit. Okay. Get it together. Damn, this is high. I need to get used to heights. Ven then decided to turn off flying and only turned it on again when he was near the ground and held his position 5 feet off the ground. Damn, that was scary. I saw that on animated films or movies, but that sure was scary in person. Technically, I shouldn't even be afraid anymore since I contain Kryptonian cells now. Even if I crash and somehow wreck my body, I'm assuming only my physical one will get hurt. I don't have the pain receptors connected generally on these bodies, so it shouldn't even matter if the body gets destroyed, but I guess being a human before gives me a bit of psychological fear. Also, my actual body is a Clintar symbiote with modified cells, so I really should not get hurt. I hope. For a few minutes, Ven kept doing the ascension and rapid descent repeatedly until he made sure he absolutely got the feeling and become confident enough that he won't suddenly forget how to stop midair and fall to the earth. Alright, for real this time. Ven did the Man of Steel pose again, but this time he intended to fly to reach the clouds. Up, and away. Hush. Ven zoomed upwards at his normal flight speed, but went faster and faster until he reached the clouds where he was speechless at the view. It was one thing to see the horizon from up high within a plane and another entirely when you are doing the flying yourself. He remained in the air admiring the view for a bit before flying again upwards even further, and eventually reached the vacuum of space. He maintained his position while checking out the outline of this blue planet called Earth. It made him truly feel how small he was compared to the vastness that is the universe. At this moment he suddenly realized he still looks like his human look, so he thought for a bit, then changed his look to Clark's black coat in Smallville Season 10, but decided to mask his face with a black costume Spidey mask. He would probably need to select a proper look later on, but for now this was his temporary getup. At least now I know I can get to this height to heal Clark later on. Without the planet's atmosphere, Clark could absorb much more direct sunlight, so theoretically it should heal him quicker. While he was just floating there, he also realized that he's able to use a lot more possible combinations with the face, considering all the people he's copied cells from. So he was considering making another face for when he would need to help out as a hero or something. So he decided he would experiment much later on about faces he could use. Okay, next on my agenda is super speed flying and re-entry to Earth. Since I have Kryptonian cells, I shouldn't burn anymore or get hurt. But before that, let's check if there's any satellites nearby. He then used the enhanced vision Superman normally has to check if there are any nearby satellites with cameras. From the looks of things, most of them are either pointing downward towards Earth or out into space. No satellites currently pointed around the area of the orbit, so he started practicing superspeed flying in orbit before finally deciding to re-enter Earth. As he quickly descends, an orange hue of heat forms in his face and hands as he re-enters Earth. He doesn't feel the heat that much anymore, so he's no longer worried. After feeling the air again, as thin as it is that high, Ven decided to stop his descent for fear of being seen and thought of as a meteor. So he was only partially visible on re-entry with the heat buildup, but not that noticeable anymore after he stopped. He made sure he's not on fire before speeding back down. Okay, I've had my fun for now. I think this will do for the time being. Now I need to go visit my staff and maybe check on Pokemon launch. Also need to discuss if I can add the Need for Speed in GTA or separate it as its own game. Chapter 35. Pokemon launch and GTA plans. Third-person POV. After arriving at his office in Metropolis, Ven set up a meeting as usual and started discussions. So Pokemon was just released earlier today, right? How are the numbers so far? Ven. It's going smoothly. Game stores are asking for more copies as the physical release ones are getting sold out very quickly. Staff 1. The early reviews on game forums in DC World are very good as well. Staff 2. Sir, we also received an offer from an animation company in Japan for an anime adaptation as well. It turns out one of the early reviewers we got from Japan had a relative in the animation industry and saw them playing the game. One thing led to another, and next thing we know we're getting official offers. Staff 3. In my old world I think Nintendo was in charge of the anime version there, but I can't be sure since I didn't pay attention to it that much. But I guess it's no problem to hand this off to them since I already have a lot on my hands anyway. Ven thought. Alright. Send them a copy of the Fire Red, but tell them the anime must follow the main protagonist of the game, not their own character. In case of sequels, the anime will follow those protagonists as well. Ven exclaimed. He didn't want an Ash Ketchum character here where he's an eternal loser of a character that won't win a league till decades later yet is still a 10-year-old kid. He wanted the anime to follow the game protagonist, but expand on it instead, adding more supporting characters if they wanted, bringing life to the game even more. Using the anime, he could put in hints or Easter eggs that would lead to things in the games. This would also make the players feel as if they really were part of the story, being able to participate in the game and watch the anime. Sir, it's only the first day, but we're already getting a lot of buzz about the stuffed toys in DCW. A lot of posts asking for earlier release of the toys. Staff 2. Seems people are more enthusiastic about this than we thought. Staff 1. I don't mind releasing it earlier, but at least on the 3rd day. Ven. Yes, sir. Next, let's discuss GTA. I heard it's nearing completion, yes? Yes, sir. Is something the matter? Staff 1. Ven then told them about the concept of Need for Speed and asked their opinions if it was to be included or separated as its own game. I suggest doing a separate game, that way we can profit more. Staff 1. I think it's not a bad idea to combine it though. That way the game is much more alive for GTA. Staff 2. Or we can make it separate for now, but maybe combine it when we do the VR version so that one is much more realistic? Staff 3. Yes, I think I like that last idea. Let's go with that then. Also make sure to try and contact car manufacturers later on when we do the VR version if they want to advertise their cars. If they don't, we can just model our own car designs. Don't include real-world cars unless they pay us to advertise, alright? Ven. Understood. In a random apartment in Gotham, a young woman was removing her clothes and stored a few jewels in her hidden safe. Got a good haul today. Diablo. Hecate. Otto. Mommy's home. She then proceeded to feed her cats, then went for a shower. After cleaning up, she sat on her couch and opened her laptop. She was feeling bored at the moment, so she randomly tried to download a random game. Pokemon, eh? Why don't we check this out? There's a few cute animals, so this should be nice to look at, hopefully. After installing and starting the game, she was instantly drawn in. Choosing Bulbasaur as her starter, she went on her first Pokemon adventure. After reaching Route 5, she came across a Pokemon that made her giddy with amusement. Oh my gosh. A cute cat. Meowth, huh? Let's go catch this one. After obtaining a Meowth, she knew she would enjoy the game. The idea of building her cute team of Pokemon and taking care of them in-game was amusing to her. As a cat lover, she had a soft spot for cute animals after all. Since she was all done with her work for the night, she spent the rest of the night playing and enjoying the game until she made the mistake of opening the game's account in DCW and saw the stuffed toys to be released in a few days. She was instantly in love and made up her mind to buy all the versions they had available when it came out. All across the country, people are enjoying the new game and started taking note of the nearest toy stores the moment they learned about the stuffed toy. In DCW, there were a lot of discussions regarding the game. Which starter did you pick, and are they worth it in the long run? Gym locations and their element types. Where to get fossil Pokemon. Oh damn guys, my Charmander evolved. He looks a lot cooler now. There's so many Pokemon and a lot of them are so cute. I can't decide on which to add to my team, oh my gosh. Pikachu. Anyone know how to get past that huge sleeping fat one? There are ghost-type Pokemon. There's a weird blocked cave near Cerulean City. Anyone know how to unlock that? How the hell are we supposed to catch that Abra? It keeps teleporting on its first turn. Looking for online trades with Fire Red version. I have Leaf Green. Anyone up for PvP? Gimme. Rumors of a 151st Pokemon and how to get it. What is Mukwo and how to get it? For the next few days, people are mostly talking about Pokemon. It became a huge topic with a lot of hype, like that time Tamagotchis were popular in Ven's world. The moment toy stores started selling the stuffed toys, people flocked to their stores and business was blooming. Because of the surge in demand of Pokemon stuffed toys, several toy factories started opening up in several cities including Gotham. A lot of people were able to get new jobs and proper income. The new job openings greatly reduced street people and homeless people. Because of this improvement in Gotham, even Bruce Wayne was very appreciative of Ven's moves. He didn't really think much about Ven when he first started new companies, but now that the effects are being felt, he realized that maybe having him go off on his own wasn't a bad idea at all. His originally suspicious mind was a little more accepting now than before. He understood that while this is a small change in Gotham, it's indeed a good one, and it has potential to go further and improve the city. He still doesn't appear as much as Bruce since Ven was taking care of that every now and then. But sometimes he was required to visit Wayne Enterprises with Lucius for either new gadgets or board-related stuff that he normally just sleeps through. But even as he drives across Gotham as Bruce, he could see a bit of the positive improvements in Gotham. Unlike before, he was now a lot more hopeful of the future. It was not obvious to anyone, but this was one huge change in the mindset of Batman, making him much more open to cooperation and thus making the possibility of joining the Justice League in the future easier. Chapter 36. Healing Clark from a stab wound. Third-person POV. Smallville, Kansas, Kent Farm. Clark is lying down on his barn. He tried to use kryptonite on Jeremiah, the boy who obtained powers of a Kryptonian through a certain dagger, an artifact discovered by Lionel Luthor from the Kawach Caves. Jeremiah was supposed to be the future leader of the Kawach tribe. As a graduate student, he was being trained by the current leader, Professor Joseph Willowbrook, and had him join him when he was contacted by Lionel to identify an artifact they found. The professor tried to brush it off and lie that it was cookware. But Jeremiah was someone who hated having no access to their tribe's heritage. He believed strongly that the cave and everything in it was Kawach property and should be returned to them. So he took the dagger, obtained Kryptonian abilities and punched Lionel. He was shot by the bodyguards, but he was bulletproof. So he sped away unscathed. Clark was notified by the professor and Clark understood that kind of power was dangerous and tried to talk him out of it, but he failed. He was beyond reason. Clark thought Jonathan was right, that he would have the same weakness as him, but he didn't. Because his body was still human, he only borrowed powers through the dagger. So Clark failed and was stabbed by Jeremiah and left there to die. In the show, this was where Clark is discovered by Jonathan and Martha, and then healed by Jonathan through Jor-El's powers. But since Ven interfered, Jonathan never got those abilities, hence Ven needed to save Clark this time. Ven was visiting Smallville regularly incognito, while keeping an eye on Clark's barn. He knew this moment would come and he waited for it from afar. Ven didn't want to hinder Clark's trials too much, so he allowed these events to take place. While he knew he wanted to change a lot, there were still things he needed to learn or experience. As Clark was bleeding out, Ven came in and took Clark outside the barn. It was time to help him heal. Clark was still barely conscious at this point, but he was still able to see Ven before he passed out. Ven carried him and flew up as far as he could. "Hold on, Clark," Ven whispered. After he got out of Earth's atmosphere, he flew to the other side of the planet since it was nighttime in Kansas. After reaching an orbit where abundant sunlight was available, Ven held Clark to absorb the sunlight. Since there was no atmosphere to block the sunlight, Ven could see Clark's chest beginning to heal. Ven waited there for a few minutes. There was nothing wrong with Clark being bathed in sunlight anyway. Ven heard Clark's heartbeat normalize, and when Clark woke up, he freaked out. He began flailing and panicking. Since they were in the vacuum of space, Clark couldn't speak. Ven grabbed him and slowly flew back to Earth. When they reached the height with a little bit of atmosphere, Clark started to calm down a bit and started talking. "What's going on? How are you doing this?" Clark asked in a small shout. The wind was quite loud, but since both of them had enhanced hearing, they could talk anyway. "You were stabbed, Clark. You were barely alive. This was the part where Jonathan would have healed you using the Jor-El's influence. But like I said before, it would have been too much for his heart and would have killed him. Since I prevented all that, here I am, making sure you get healed without him. But how are you flying? This is impossible. Don't worry about it. You can do this as well. Once you develop it anyway." I can. Yep. Just like your other abilities, it will develop and you'll be able to do it in your own time. Come on, let's get you back home. What about Jeremiah? Can you help me beat him? Sorry, pass on this one. I'm only stepping in at the moment to compensate for Jonathan not having abilities. And I may intervene on some other situations as well if I think we can skip those events without endangering your growth. So, no can do, bud. But don't worry, I'm sure you got this. Are you kidding? He nearly killed me. And you better not forget it either. These powers can be very intoxicating for the weak-willed. I mean, look at political power, it corrupts a lot of people left, right, and center. And that's just something already in this planet. With Kryptonian powers, that's a whole new ball game. So if I were you, I'd make sure all my people's artifacts and remnant relics are safe from other people's hands. I'd be careful who I'd allow getting Kryptonian abilities. Clark understood Ven was right. Too much power corrupts those who were not ready for it. You know what, I'll give you a hint on your Jeremiah problem. You have two options. 1. Try to be smart about it, be tactical on your movement and dodge some blows. Would have been better if you knew self-defense. Or 2. Think like a linebacker in football. Just use brute force since you both have equal powers, except you're a bigger guy than he is. Think of your powers canceling each other out. So you're going to be fighting a smaller guy. Well, a smaller guy with a knife at least. And with that, Ven landed to drop him off and then flew away. A day later, Clark took option 2 and tackled Jeremiah, which caused the dagger to be thrown away. It fell near where Lionel was tied up by Jeremiah when he tried to kill him. As Lex let him loose, the dagger fell, almost hitting his head. The dagger disintegrated the moment Lionel and Lex touched it, which according to legend, would reveal Numans, the savior from the sky enemy. But Clark didn't know who touched it first, so he wasn't sure if it was Lex or Lionel. But he started to doubt Lex. Meanwhile, Jeremiah's body gave out. Just like Jonathan would have, his body didn't endure the power, so the moment he lost it, he died. A few days later, Clark was in a very bad place. Metaphorically at least. He found out Pete was moving away, due to pressure from constantly keeping Clark's secret. He was afraid he would slip up and would never forgive himself if he betrayed Clark. So he left. No matter how much it hurt to say goodbye to his best friend. Lana was moving to Paris and Lex, who he thought was his friend, was keeping tabs on him. He showed him the room where Lex investigated the time he saved him and everything connecting him to the Kawach caves. While Lex tried to spin the story that it was about him, not Clark, it didn't work and Clark was so upset about the betrayal. Lex betraying him was horrible. He defended Lex from everyone telling him that Lex was a bad guy. With this revelation, it felt like he was struck by a knife in the gut. Pete moving away because of the burden of his secret gave him guilt. Lana moving away made him feel empty. For the longest time he had loved Lana. With their complicated relationship, he thought time would allow them to resume their relationship, but he never thought she would choose to leave. And to top it all off, Jor-El wanted him to leave Smallville to prepare for his training and education. Jor-El copied the form of a Lindsay Harrison to pretend as Kara, and tried to tempt Clark into coming with her inside the cave wall, which Clark eventually did. Clark was temporarily changed to Kal-El, without his memories as Clark, so he would begin searching for 3 artifacts that would combine later on and form his fortress. Ven thought about interfering on this as well but decided against it for now. He knew this would eventually lead to his first meeting with Lois Lane, so he let it happen. Ven tried to recall the events that were going to happen in the next few months, using his memories from his past life. Pretty sure this current time corresponds to the beginning of the 4th season. And there's not really much events that I can change that I can actually get away with. Most of the events Clark can and will handle anyway. I remember this is when he meets Bart, the speedster from the future, but that's not something I'm particularly interested in. He thought to himself, maybe I can just protect the Kents when the second meteor shower happens. Since they have another kid now in this reality, I should probably make sure they make it out and don't get killed. Ven had decided not to interfere for a while. He planned to just wait until the meteor shower. Chapter 37 Gideon. Third-person POV. Ven was still finalizing his full dive system. He realized that while the tech was quite advanced, that was just the actual full dive pod itself. He still needed proper security for the tech and servers. He wanted to make sure it was unhackable by current technology, so he needed some serious software. He can use the Kryptonian tech for servers once the fortress gets built soon. He planned to try and check if he can access Gideon, the AI Barry made. So he had to wait for an opportunity to access the time vault. And also keep an eye on Thawne. There were a few things he needed to consider. First, he needed to be sure Gideon would not rat him out to Thawne. Having the future speedster breathing down your neck isn't fun. He's extremely brilliant though very much apathetic to murder. To him everyone was a dead relic. Though he is calculative to ensure his future is unchanged. Ven planned to check if Gideon had anything left for him from his future self. Ven's plan was to acquire a powerful security software from the combined technology of Krypton and Kalu from the 31st century via Brainiac 5. Then the final product he intended to store through Gideon at some point before Thawne becomes the Reverse Flash and steals a copy to take back in time. While he could have just asked for Brainiac 5 to create Kaluan software, he wanted to make one that will work on Kryptonian servers. His plan was to make the servers with Kryptonian crystals from the fortress, so it would have enough capacity to function while being accessed by theoretically the whole planet's population. Since this was full dive VR, it would need to be powerful enough to handle all the players in the massive world. Not to mention it needed to be untraceable with that timeline's technology. This was a complicated plan but one that Ven knew he could probably pull off as long as he does not forget anything, as it requires obtaining the end result first before doing all the work. Okay, so if I ever pull this off, I would need this to go smoothly. Step 1. Obtain Clark's Legion ring after he hides it. Step 2. Travel to the 31st century and ask Brainiac 5's help to make a security software based on Kryptonian and Kaluan technology that he can use to work with his timeline's Kryptonian technology. Step 3. Ensure it would actually work with Clark's fortress. Step 4. Travel back to the beginning of the 25th century Flash Museum and store the compressed and encrypted software in Gideon's memory files, including instructions how to use it. Step 5. Ask Gideon not to tell Thawne anything he does or any interaction he has with Gideon, and instead pretend nothing happened. Step 6. Talk to older Barry and ask him to give him higher priority commands than Eobard Thawne with Gideon. If he asks, tell him about his plan. Step 7. Return to own timeline. Step 8. Wait for Fortress and create servers there, separate from Jor-El's programming or that database. Man, what a complicated plan, but if this works, Gideon theoretically should have my files already, even before I do all this. But that means I really have to complete this plan and not forget a single step. Ven thought to himself. If there's nothing in Gideon, this would mean I would need to somehow catch Thawne off guard and make him forget using my persuasion skill. After carefully considering his steps, Ven flew to Central City and arrived at around 6 p.m. He landed on a random rooftop near Star Labs. The moment he landed, he used his enhanced vision combined with X-ray from Clark's powers to search for Thawne, who is at this time pretending to be Dr. Harrison Wells, bound in a wheelchair. It took him a while, but he finally found him still inside. He was hoping he would at some point leave and go home. If he sneaked inside and he was still inside the building, he might get caught. Took Ven a couple of days to get a feel on his schedule. The moment Wells went home, he started his plan. To ensure he doesn't get discovered, he reverted back to symbiote form. As weird as it was flying in that form, it made it a lot harder to notice since he could sneak in better. He avoided all cameras and carefully sneaked in using inconspicuous entry points. It took some effort and a lot of searching to find the time vault. But after finding it, he reverted back to human form after double-checking there were no cameras. Ven changed his look into tactical Spidey look from far from home for now. At least this way, no one would recognize him if he gets spotted now. He planned to use this look when he's doing stuff he doesn't want anyone to know about. After entering the time vault, first thing he saw was the Reverse Flash suit. He ignored it and looked for that console at the end of the vault. The moment he accessed it, Gideon showed up. Good evening, Gideon. Know who I am by any chance? Good evening, Venerable, yes. Accessing hidden memory files. Gideon replied. Confirmed. Alpha level member. Designation 09 Venom. Ven Matthews. Owner of V-Games. Creator of DC Universe. An honorary founding member of the Justice League. Chief of Software Security for Watchtower Orbital Satellite. Source of Full Dive and me. Ven cut Gideon off and simply said. Alright. Huh. I guess that means I really do help out in the founding of the League. That DCU. I'm guessing that's what I name my version of the Oasis. Makes sense since I named my social media DC World, Universe for the VR thing. He then plugged in a small thumb drive. Command Package Retrieval Code SSFOS31. Ven decided on this code to stand for Security Software Fortress of Solitude and the 31 from the century he planned to take it from. Downloading compressed file to thumb drive. Complete. Is there anything else, Ven? Just to confirm, this interaction is hidden from Thawne, correct? Affirmative. Alpha member clearance given by Barry Allen. I am not allowed to inform Eobard Thawne, currently known as Dr. Harrison Wells, of any of our interactions. Good. Ven then removes the drive but then asks Gideon. You do have access to this time's internet, right? Is it possible for you to create a copy of yourself to a private server of my designation? Possible, though this time's technology would make the copy transfer process slower due to insufficient advancements. Alright, once Superman's fortress is up, I will create a private server there. Once you detect it, create a copy and save it there. Just make sure not to interfere with Jor-El's programming, so we don't hinder Clark's training. And as always, Thawne doesn't get notified of this. Affirmative. Creating scheduled directive. I will execute the moment the private servers are detected. After everything was set, Ven left the vault. He changed back to symbiote form to avoid cameras. The moment he was outside and away from any cameras, he reverted back to human form and flew home. Looks like the plan went smoothly. Now I just have to make sure these steps are followed to avoid paradoxes. After getting home, he started studying the instructions and figured out how to implement the software. He intended to only use it for his Oasis, or rather DCU, but now from the looks of it, he was going to use it on security for the Watchtower as well. He would have added it onto the Batcave's computers as well, but Bruce might not trust it if he didn't understand it, so he held off on it for now. As he was resting on the couch, he then suddenly had a random thought. Aren't I forgetting something? Since I used my symbiote bonding as a basis for connecting with the mind for full dive technology, what else can I use my symbiote body experience as? Wait. I seem to recall that the Ultimate Universe version of symbiote was artificially made by the Parkers to cure diseases. What if I used that and make a medical pod? This might be worth looking into. Ven then made plans to analyze his own symbiote form later on when the fortress is accessible. Maybe I can synthesize an artificial sample of this body to function like the Ultimate Universe version, minus the sentient or symbiote part. Maybe just the healing part. And make that sample into some form of liquid. Kinda like that Dragon Ball Z pods the Scions used to heal when Vegeta gets his ass handed to him. It won't be no Senzubin efficiency, but still increased healing either way. The League could use some proper medical help after all. Based on comics of movies, their technologies are often battle-focused or reactive to enemy tech. But they could use proper healing pods for their everyday battles. And so, he now had more plans on top of his VR project. To create a medpod that uses a liquid solution derived from his own symbiote form to heal its patients. Time Vault Star Labs. Dr. Wells comes inside the Time Vault. He then stands up from his electric wheelchair. Good morning, Gideon. Good morning, Dr. Wells. Everything all right? Everything is fine. Chapter 38. Game Development Advancements. Third-person POV. As Pokemon reaches new heights in sales and popularity, more and more people are taking note of games and their products. Multiple game companies also riding on the hype, though not as successful. With Pokemon games and anime in full swing, Games decided to release GTA. As Pokemon was focused on the light-hearted story and gameplay, GTA was centered on pure chaos and mayhem. People got to try being reckless crazy inside the game, which reduced violent tendencies among masses. Since people got to be crazy inside a game, they lost the desire or impulse to do it in real life. They got an outlet to release their intrusive thoughts. In the end, Ven decided to separate the NFS function for now, but he intended to combine it with GTA in the VR mode so the open world was more alive. In the past few months, Games have released a whole lot of recreated games in the PS1 era. And since the development of Unreal Engine was progressing quite decently, they managed to skip the progress from the early versions all the way to Unreal Engine 5 equivalent. While Games have not released any games that are really realistic yet, he started having several programmers develop a more user-friendly software to help with 3D modeling and animation. Ven thought that if it was a lot easier for them to animate, then it would be easier to produce games, and in turn reproduce them a lot quicker as well. In Ven's old world, game companies also develop their in-house software in creating games. Companies limit that development to a workable state though. But Ven is choosing to develop it even further, and pouring a lot of resource into the project with the future in mind. As it was, 3D modelers would need to start from base polygons, then build up to the final look, then add bones and rigging. After the character model is done, only then can they even start considering animation. But what Ven had in mind was having base model templates included with muscle structures, high skin textures, built-in internal organs or blood splatter simulations, even including proper fat, hair and jiggle physics with several options to remove certain features as needed. And these templates would be given several options to add on specific features or parts. As if a massive character creation screen from some random AAA MMO game. And they can use this in all games they create. So modelers won't have to start from scratch every single time. And the environment creation also works just as easy. Like housing systems in modern games, it would be fairly easy to add on elements, change main backgrounds, mix and match themes, etc. The main idea was to create 3D models, characters, objects and environments with ease, so they could focus on the gameplay of specific games instead of wasting time starting from scratch every time. Ven named this new advanced software, funny enough, The Matrix. He thought it was a funny inside joke. Since that particular movie didn't exist in that world for some reason, nobody would get it. But if it came down to it, Ven would probably extend his reach into movie-making industry, but for now, he had his hands full with games and keeping an eye on the Justice League future members. After several months of testing and trial runs, Matrix version 1.0 was released internally in games. Ven made sure to keep the software secure so it would not be easy to pirate or smuggle a copy outside. He made the software have the regular features of 3D software such as Blender or Maya, but have his complete template system and made the work so much easier. Several teams in games started remaking everything in Unreal Engine 5 quality, as per Ven's orders using Matrix. It became several times faster to make the base foundation of the games using Matrix. While some teams were focused on recreating already released games with Matrix, several teams were given orders to work on popular PS2-era games like Soul Reaver, Resident Evil 4, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, sports games, FFX, Kingdom Hearts, God of War and many others. Ven created several copies of himself and started reproducing all the games from his memory onto script form, created concept art, and noted every single detail he could. In a matter of days, Ven had an entire room filled with documents containing all his game memories, so he only needed to distribute them as needed. Ven realized how important the cloning skill was. Just like Naruto when he became Hokage, he used several clones to accomplish what he wanted in a short period of time, though he can't exactly show the skill to anyone else. Inside Games conference room. Sir, the Matrix software is working really well within all teams, and it's quite revolutionary. Staff 1. We're working at 500% times faster than before, just because of that single software. Staff 2. Good. But always make sure the software isn't leaked outside. Do all proper diligence and security to keep this in-house. Also, have the programming team develop a watered-down version to be used specifically by police and CSI, focused on blood splatter physics and crime scene reenactments. And make another separate version for the medical industry, focused on human anatomy simulations. Ven. Sir, this is a very good idea. This could help hospitals. This could reduce mistakes and increase new interns' learning capability. With actual visual input, they can become more precise. Staff 3. I don't want this getting out just yet though. I will be releasing these officially at the same time once we sort out all the bugs. Oh, and make one version for the movie industry as well, by the way. That one I don't know what to do with just yet, but I want it just in case. Ven. Understood. Apart from the Asian-themed game scripts I sent to Square, how's their side doing? No problems, I assume. Ven. None, sir. But we did receive several requests about their new ideas that they were hoping you would green light. Staff 1. Square has always been part of the development ever since Ven acquired them. Every time he had a script that was originally created in Japan, he would always send to them so it would retain its Asian feel and themes. This time he looked through all the proposals for ideas they came up with and thought that some of them were interesting, so he gave them the green light to produce. I'm actually glad they started developing their own ideas for games. If any of the teams from this side also have their own ideas, filter them to what you guys think and send me the ones you think would work. I don't mind it if you have really good ideas that could be great games as well. Ven. The staff were overjoyed that they were now starting to have a bit more freedom in game development. At first they were only doing everything Ven wanted as a job, but later on they all started getting inspired by the more narrative games. They didn't think it was possible before, but now, after developing several with deep stories or gameplay, several artists have begun to really become passionate about it. They were also very thankful they didn't leave the industry after the initial takeovers. Before, they were only focusing on job and income stability, but after several games released by Ven, their artistic souls were ignited. Soon, aside from Ven's scripts, several games were also being developed and produced, and Games was quickly becoming the main top dog of the game development industry. When people talked about games, the first thing that came to mind was Now of Games. After the first batch of games that were made using Matrix were completed, Ven held off on releasing any of them and planned to have it all released via press conference together with the medical-focused version and police and CSI version of Matrix. Ven named the ones for hospitals Matrix Med and the ones for police Matrix PD. These were extremely watered-down versions that were limited to what could be used for those industries. Ven made sure that even if they are reverse-engineered and copied by programmers, they still wouldn't be able to compete with the Matrix full version. After all, unlike the full version, these were deliberately going to be distributed externally, so he will not have control over its security. Soon these two versions of Matrix were ready and fully tested. Ven contacted several doctors privately as well in order to test the Matrix Med to get their opinions and added several requested functions. He did the same with the Matrix PD by contacting several people in CSI, which included Barry Allen. Ven didn't interact with him directly though, as he wanted the programmers directly get feedback, so he had them talk to the professionals instead. And after months of back and forth, the software were properly encrypted and ready for mass release alongside several new games. Ven had Games schedule a press conference, though it did make him think if he would ever create his version of E3 or Nintendo Direct where he would announce new releases, but he put that idea at the back of his mind for now. Chapter 39. Matrix Software and UE Press Conference. Third-person POV. Games Press Conference. Events room for Games had a makeshift stage with dozens of reporters seated in their seats, awaiting the announcement of Games. They were all looking forward to whatever is going to be announced by the company that's been making waves recently. While the news they are covering isn't as critically relevant compared to crime and politics, the games Gammas produce bring comfort to a lot of people. They have brought back some vitality and enjoyment to the people who are weary and tired of constant negativity of the world around them. As they were trying to be busy and triple-check their notes and camera equipment, when the doors near the stage opened, and one of the female staff walked in front of the dozens of microphones set up on the lectern in front. All the reporters become silent and eager to hear the announcements. Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin the press conference. Without further ado, I give you Mr. Ven Matthews. A handsome man with lean but built body in a suit walks to the lectern and gives a nod to the female staff, then lightly smiles to the crowd. Hello everyone and thank you for coming. Today we at Games would like to announce a few of our upcoming products. Normally we would simply have our own mini ceremony then launch the products after some marketing. But today these products are quite significant and may affect a lot of parties, so we are announcing it here instead. Ven then signals the staff and the huge screen behind him lights up to show the products. Here at Games we not only strive to produce quality games that people can enjoy, we also try to innovate game development and constantly try new things that could further our process. After a lot of work done by my wonderful people at Games, we are announcing the Matrix Software Solutions. These are separate software derived from a single main software that we originally developed to help our game development teams. However, we have come to realize the potential of the software and have decided to release custom versions of this software, as well as a few games made with this technology. The screen changes to show a few short video clips of the software being used to make characters in a game. First, let me give you a quick overview of what it is. The Matrix software is a 3D software. We originally intended to use it for game development, specifically for character, object and environment creation. But as most people in the 3D modeling and animation industry may know, artists usually start from scratch every time. It usually starts with objects we in the industry know as polygons in a three-dimensional space. Then artists build on it until it becomes whatever object or character was intended. But this is a tedious process to start from nothing every single time. So we created a software that would have base foundation templates. These templates have an extremely wide variety of range from random everyday objects to complete themed environments. But for now let's focus on characters. A base character model, be it male or female, can be created on a single click. This will produce a base model that comes fully modeled with internal muscle structures and bone rigging. This is to simulate how each human body part bends so as to not look unnatural. And these base models can be customized with pre-existing parameters that can alter the character's appearance. In short, it's like a game's character creation menu but more detailed. The screen shows the simple character creation process being done. With this, our game developers are able to swiftly create characters or any object we may need for the game without starting from scratch. And since they are already set up with muscles, bones rigging and physics simulations, they are practically ready to use for animation or move to the customization screen for full detail modification. This makes it so our artists and animators are able to focus more on the gameplay, rather than spend countless hours making a new model from scratch. This software also uses our Unreal Engine technology that can produce extremely high-resolution models and textures, with highly realistic lighting and water simulations. The screen then shows several animated environments and random characters that were using said technology. The crowd of reporters, and the viewers at home of the broadcast were awestruck as the scenes shown were very realistic compared to the current graphics of games. Even the waterfall simulations shown were so high quality that the audience who have never seen this kind of quality rendering thought it was a video of real places. The Unreal Engine technology focuses on using such high-resolution rendering yet keeping the hardware resources moderate, so the computers can keep up, so we don't have to worry about polygon count. The difference with our Matrix software is that Unreal Engine is more generalized use. But Matrix software has our base templates more focused on eliminating the need for starting from scratch and reusing already existing assets, as well as modifying them to create new ones while keeping the rest of the tedious work of repetition minimal. Because of this technology along with our Matrix software, we are able to produce our first batch of games with high-quality resolutions. The screen changed and showed the covers of the first batch of games. It was games in the PS2 era from Ven's old world with titles like FFX, Resident Evil 4, Need for Speed, Silent Hill, Dragon Quest VIII, Persona 4, GTA Vice City, MGS2, Devil May Cry, Soul Reaver, Kingdom Hearts, Suikoden 3 and Breath of Fire Dragon Quarter. They didn't release any sports games just yet since Ven was never a fan of sports games, but he knew they were profitable so they were still in the works. The screens only showed the covers, but the full trailers will be available through our website and DCW account after the conference. The crowd suddenly went a bit loud with their murmurs and whispers. This was groundbreaking for that world. While most of these were from the PS2 era, Ven used high-quality rendering so they might as well be like PS5 quality games from his old world. Countless viewers at home felt like they were going crazy with this reveal, and took to DCW to post their thoughts. In mere seconds the topic was trending. For gamers in this world, this was the dawn of a new gaming era. Ven waited for the press to settle down a bit before continuing. While this is a new height in gaming, we at Games also realize that this has so much more potential to offer, which leads me to the custom software. Our main Matrix software full version is only internal in Games and affiliate companies, but we are releasing 2 custom versions. First, we have created what we call Matrix Med, which is centered on models that are fully rendered not only in muscle structures, but internal organs as well. We had several teams working with a few privately contacted doctors to make extremely accurate models with proper human anatomy organs that are to this day still being improved the more we learn about them. This software's focus is particularly for the medical field to help doctors, nurses and interns with learning procedures, and whatever else they have use for a high-quality model like this. It is constantly being improved in cooperation with doctors, so as to keep it accurate and ever-evolving. These also have separate functions to simulate blood circulation, that we are hoping could help in terms of disease and virus research to discover cures. I will not go into detail any further, but the bottom line is, this software is intended to assist the medical field. This time it was those who were related to the said field that were going crazy. Several research institutes immediately tried to get in touch with Games while hospital heads and CEOs were calling for meetings to discuss the announcement. While initially it doesn't sound anything groundbreaking to people not in the medical field, little do they know this would progress research greatly because of the simulations. And since the software is constantly being developed as well, this would keep adding features that the medical field would greatly benefit from. After another pause, Ven continued his last announcement for the day. Finally, we also want to announce Matrix PD, which is focused on helping law enforcement in terms of crime scene investigations. This one will be focused on simulating crime scenes and how the crimes took place, be it for police investigation or for court evidence. This one will be able to simulate blood splatters as well as bullet trajectories, even weapon estimations based on body wound damage. These also come with basic physics simulations, so as to show the possibilities of what could have occurred, based on the data input. While this in no way replaces CSI operatives, we are hoping this would greatly assist them in uncovering truths. Nothing beats a proper human's experience and adaptability. This is merely a tool to assist further. Like the Matrix Med, this will also be constantly improved with coordination from any law enforcement agencies that wish to assist us or leave their feedback and input. The moment Ven finished, it was government agencies' turn to freak out and start contacting their superiors and calling for meetings. Since Barry Allen himself took part in the testing, he was also given a copy that he can use, which also helped him greatly. Though the first thing he simulated, to no one's surprise in his circle of friends and family, was his mother's death. While Barry didn't share the results with anyone, he was able to get something out of it immediately. Originally, Cisco and Detective Joe West would have found the blood splatter in the old house while they were secretly investigating. This would have led them to find the blood that it was future Barry's blood. But now, Barry was able to find the blood sample because of the simulated blood splatter. So he had asked Detective West and Cisco to assist him, which led to the same events taking place of them learning it was future Barry that was there that night. As Ven's announcements were done, the reporters were initially dumbfounded on where to begin with their questions, but eventually got their bearings back and did their jobs. Mr. Matthews, will you be releasing the full version software at any point in the future? Reporter 1. We haven't decided yet, but for now it remains in-house. Ven replied. But as he does, he saw a familiar girl at the back who interestingly was covering his announcement as well, so he chose to pick her for the next question. What about the entertainment industry? Will you be releasing a version for them? Excellent question, Miss Sullivan, Chloe Sullivan. Chloe replied. Smallville torch. She said a little quietly since she was way out of her league here. She was only covering for a school paper, but she got lucky she was in Metropolis visiting her cousin, so she was able to hear about this press conference and somehow attend. We haven't decided to release a version for the entertainment industry, but we are releasing Unreal Engine separately, so if they want to use that and build their own software, we don't mind. Provided of course they pay for the usage fees for Unreal Engine. Ven said. Chloe was elated that her question was answered but decided to push her luck a little and ask a follow-up. Will you be getting into the movie industry then? Since you do have software to make your own renders now. That depends if I still have enough leeway. Game development keeps me busy nowadays, but I probably wouldn't say no to making 1 or 2 films if we ever get a good idea for a script. If it's going to be fully animated or not, is yet to be determined as well. Ven said, then went to other reporters. Little did Ven know, this small assist to Chloe would streamline her entry to the Daily Planet instead of starting at the very bottom like she originally would. Are you not afraid of competitors if you release Unreal Engine? Reporter 2. Not really. In fact, we welcome it. We of games are also passionate about games. We look forward to what our competitors can achieve with this technology. As gamers, it would be fun to enjoy others' works as well. Ven replied. Of course, for now we will still keep our advantage, which is the Matrix software full version. Ven said with a slight smirk. After some minor questions, the press conference ended smoothly with all the reporters eager to get back and start completing their reports. As for the viewers at home who saw the announcements via news, everyone was excited with what this could mean. For gamers, it was the dawn of realistic CG gaming. For doctors and nurses, better understanding of the human body, and proper simulations mean better training and possibly quicker decision-making if they can create surgical plans using the software. And for law enforcement, it meant improving investigations. So this not only affected the police, even FBI and CIA were trying to contact games. Chapter 40 Movies in DVR. Third-person POV. It's been a few days yet the craze has not died down. Government agencies are contacting Ven's office left and right. Of course, his staff has already begun negotiations and deals with most of them, provided they were sincere in their offer. When it came to the medical sector, they already started making deals with several hospitals and research institutes. While Matrix Med and PD are selling like hotcakes, the games are literally flying off shelves. People are still in awe of the realistic CG and effects of the new batch of games. A lot of people called in sick and played games on the first few days that it was practically empty in schools and some workplaces. A lot of people were just at home enjoying life. Holy shit. These graphics are top-notch. So damn clean, bruh. It's so good looking. I can spend hours just staring at the scenery. When you get over the beauty, the stories are damn awesome as well. Games is the best. Manager, I'm calling in sick for the month. LOL. I'm calling in sick for a year, bitches. There goes my wallet, damn it. Shut up and take my money. What game did y'all start with? I went with Final Fantasy X and boy it is lit. Dude, Resident Evil 4 gave me nightmares. A horror game with this good CG is fucking scary. Guys, play Soul Reaver. It's a freaking masterpiece. It's impossible to consume all this damn good content in such a short time. I think my gamer soul will be happy for a year. I don't even want to look at the upcoming games yet. This much is already so overwhelming. I kind of feel sorry for competitors at this point. If they don't get Unreal Engine, their games probably won't sell. Well yeah, games literally changed gaming forever. Dip so much as a pinky in games and you never go back. Have Games just released a steering wheel type controller for racing games. I'm in. Yo, Games just announced in their website in DCW that older games will have updated graphics in the future. This is freaking big news. Damn, I want to see Pokemon with this good CG. Several game companies, however, were starting to worry since this huge leap was something that dictated whether they can survive or go bankrupt. They have to somehow reach that level of quality, otherwise their games might never sell again. So they all started negotiating the terms to obtain Unreal Engine. While this wasn't the full Matrix package, this at least gave them the ability to make high-resolution games at the cost of being behind games. Meanwhile, as Matrix software full version was completely rolled out in games, the department that is handling the conversion to VR as well as DCU main world became much more efficient. The initial hotel only expanded into an entire city, and was constantly being populated to make it alive and feel lived in. Since they planned to anyway, they already created the base planet and was just slowly populating it. Ven remembered that the movie Ready Player One showed a glimpse of the Oasis as being able to do stuff like climbing mountains, skiing, vacation planets as well, among other activities. So he planned to have the base planet where players could establish their clans and clan headquarters. The city would also have real-world stores equivalent for those who wish to advertise in-game with real-world pickup or delivery. Then most activities can be off-world, be it certain games being converted into planets, then park planets, space station casinos, or whatever he can think of. But with the Matrix software being able to reuse and combine older 3D assets, it made things a lot easier or rather simpler and user-friendly. So in a short period of time, an entire solar system with several planets were already created. It was only a matter of populating the places with details. The games already being converted were also programmed to be separate planets outside the main solar system to emphasize that they are separate systems. But as Vin initially planned, the trial version would only limit everyone inside the hotel at first. And on official launch, the whole galaxy opens up. So he prioritized the details of the hotel, and the ports to ships that will take players to game worlds directly. So when players enter a ship to go to a certain game world, the ship will have a window so players can still see the planet and have a preview of the world on their way to the game world. though the whole traveling thing would have to be a cutscene temporarily until they open the whole galaxy. Once the galaxy is unlocked, all players logging in for the first time will appear in the main plaza teleport platform, and already existing players will log in from where they logged out. In a rather cloudy afternoon, while Ven was in a rather boring board meeting as Bruce Wayne in Wayne Enterprises, he suddenly remembered that the Oasis also had the feature to replay certain movies with the player as the main character. How the hell does that work? He thought to himself. If players don't follow the plot, won't that destroy the narrative? Let's think this through. If aside from the main plotline we can expand on the world building, maybe there could be room for alternate endings based on player choices. That could work, I think. But of course that would mean I still need to limit what players can or can't do within the alternate endings we prepare. Still, that might be a fun experiment. So after the board meeting, he pretended to go home as Bruce, then used super speed and flight to go to Game's office in Metropolis. In Ready Player One, the only movies recreated in game were ones the creator liked, so in this world that would be him. So he picked Amazing Spider-Man, one of his favorites. He also picked a few more to be recreated, but he only thought of ASM for the first one to focus on for alternate endings for now. Except there was one hiccup. There's no Spider-Man movies here. DC Universe, duh. Can't believe I forgot where I was. Damn. Maybe I'll make my own then. And thus Ven decided to make his own Spidey movie. Guess I'll have to choose a different movie for DCU then, since my movie needs some time to actually take off or even be remotely interesting enough to be played through. Since there were movie-based games in his original world, he planned to use those as the base foundation for recreating movies in-game, but he planned it to be closer to the movie to be recreated but expanded so it would be exciting for the player. Since Spider-Man doesn't exist just yet, he then picked Star Wars for now since he knew that was in this world. Though he had to limit the alternate endings to those they could write, like keeping Vader alive or killing Palpatine earlier. Maybe more once they figure out possible endings. So he immediately called for his staff to contact the right people so they could get rights and start recreating the full movie in-game. He also had his people make sure that after they get the rights, they contact the original actors as well so they could be called in for alternate lines recording. Then he started planning for his version of Spidey and started having his people start hiring for camera crews, actors, set designers, everything needed to start filming. He didn't really need a main director, only an assistant director since everything was already in his head. Though he did want to modify his new script to combine the Raimi trilogy with the TSM films and MCU. Though he would include the possibility for MCU, he will just leave Easter eggs here and there as a plotline in case he does go there. For now, it was focusing on a combined Spider-Man 1 plot. Kind of funny that I'm making a Marvel film, while I'm literally in the DC universe, haha. Ven told himself.